Good evening, everyone. The City of Grand Haven regular City Council meeting of January 17th, 2023 is hereby called to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Fritz,
Here.
Lowe,
Here.
McLaughlin,
Here.
Cummins,
Here.
McNally.
Here. Don't think we have a minister lined up for the invocation this evening, but I took the liberty of collecting some prayers by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I thought I'd read and ask you to join me in standing when I do it. But before I do that, I wanted to recognize the contributions of a local Grand Haven High School senior, our student representative to the Human Relations Commission, Ms. Avery Rant, who organized a service project yesterday in Dr. King's honor that brought out volunteers to assemble snack bags for school kids of Ottawa and Muskegon counties who struggle with food security. Thank you, Avery, and all the volunteers she assembled, including volunteers from the city staff. Now, I'd ask you to join me for a prayer and then for the standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. King prayed, God help us as individuals and as a world to hear it now before it is too late. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and God's justice, and all these other things shall be added unto you. God give us strength of body to keep walking for freedom. God give us strength to remain nonviolent even though we may face death. God grant that we wage the struggle with dignity and discipline. May all who suffer oppression in this world reject the self-defeating method of retaliatory violence and choose the method that seeks to redeem. God, remove all bitterness from my heart and give me the strength and courage to face any disaster that comes my way. We thank you for your church founded upon your word that challenges us to do more than sing and pray, but to go out and work as though the very answer to our prayers depended on us and not upon you. Help us to realize that humanity was created to shine like the stars and live through all eternity. Keep us, we pray, in perfect peace. Help us to walk together, pray together, sing together, and live together until that day when all God's children, black, white, red, brown, and yellow, will rejoice in one common band of humanity. In the reign of our Lord and of our God, we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item of business is new appointments to boards and commissions. We can do these individually or we can do them collectively. Has anybody got a preference?
Doesn't matter.
Fine. Collectively?
Okay. Would you
So
please,
moved. Oh, sorry.
Maria, would you please read the nominations and then I'd entertain a motion to approve them.
Nomination of Dawn Wolf, Community Center Board, term expiring June 30th, 2026. Nomination of Kelly Larson, Main Street DDA, term expiring June 30, 2023. Nomination of Amy Koznecki, Planning Commission, term expiring June 30, 2025.
Would I have a motion to approve these nominations?
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Fritz, second by Lowe. Any discussion?
Fritz,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. At this time, I would entertain a motion to accept the consent and regular agendas.
I'd like to add, or
Okay,
Do we need a motion
How about we
put
get a
on the floor
motion
first?
first?
So moved.
Okay, Kevin, you want to support?
Yes.
Yeah, motion by Cummins, second by McLaughlin. Discussion. Karen, what you got?
yes, I'd like to add to the agenda if the rest of council is willing, in light of the recent actions taken by the Ottawa County Commission and questions from our city residents, I'd like to add consideration of a resolution to direct city staff and the HRC to draft a statement reaffirming our city's stance regarding DEI, along with any other recommended actions.
So we've got a motion to add to the agenda, and it requires, I believe, 4 of 5 votes. Is there any discussion on that?
We need a second first.
Okay, is there a second to Councilmember Lowe's motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. Is there discussion?
Fine for me. I'm good with it.
I really don't like late additions, even though this is a very pertinent one and it's very good, but I really don't like late additions coming in on this because people are in the audience and everybody's not prepared for what we're going to have discussion on it. So I said this before and I'll keep saying it again, we shouldn't do quick add-ons. If you want it done, you have a time limit to bring it in and 2 council members can put it on the agenda. You don't have to be at the last minute.
I understand. It's not something that we'd approve. It's really just asking the HRC and city staff to put something together on it for us to look at a later
I understand that, but
So,
I still
I
think it's
understand.
not good business for us. But
Okay.
it does need to be addressed, though.
I guess I kind of hoped it was on the agenda, but it wasn't when I finally got to look at it.
I just so for the audience's benefit, the matters can be added to the agenda, and the agenda is published 5 or 6 days in advance of the meeting, and they can be put on the agenda through the action of 2 council members, or by the city manager, or by the mayor. And I guess
Before the Thursday or 4 or 5 days.
Yes.
Yeah, before Thursday. Right, and these are some recent events, and I would say this is in response to concerns that I have heard from our constituents that we have not spoken on the matter, and it seemed, particularly following Martin Luther King Day yesterday, it felt a little bit weak for us not to be at least preparing, and so I apologize for the short notice on this, but that's really the rationale, and rather than have individuals try to speak out, I felt we should be preparing something that council would be officially saying in response to those questions from our citizens about how they would be affected, et cetera.
I don't have an objection to that. I just don't like things being added
I
at the last
understand.
minute, that's all.
And I,
Nor do I.
I just want to remind everybody that it's really not good business for us to do such thing.
and,
Like
and
I said, this needs to be addressed, though. I have to agree with you 100%.
Kevin, you got anything? Ryan, got anything?
No, I understand the sensitivity of being careful about last-minute ads, but also wanting to be timely with addressing a concern that our community may have as
Right,
well.
and I guess what I would suggest is, since we're not going to consider the actual statement prior to the next meeting, that we vote on this, and if it fails, we bring it back through normal agenda action.
Or is it something that, since it's a directive for them to put something, together, could we add it to the consent agenda rather than, if you don't want to, as you said, we're not really discussing
I think
what
it's
statement
the effect, I
itself.
think, is the same, Karen. We are going to add it to the agenda tonight, or we're not. So,
Correct?
right,
But
so,
then we wouldn't have to discuss it again if we added it to the consent agenda. It would just,
and what would you add to the consent agenda?
I don't know if, Marie, you had it, or if you had it written down, but it's consideration of a resolution to direct city staff and the Human Relations Commission to draft a statement reaffirming our city's stance regarding DEI, along with any other recommended actions.
Right.
And that's in
I don't-
response to those,
I don't understand the distinction you're making. So it's not on our agenda and you want to add it to our agenda, whether you add it to the regular agenda or the consent agenda, it still requires a vote. Am I getting that right, Ron?
Yes,
To
Yes.
add to the
yes,
agenda? Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
Four votes would be required.
Okay. All right. Has anybody got anything else they want to say?
Or we can wait, and they wouldn't take action, and we'd wait another 2 to 3 weeks, and then we would give them, that action. I mean, we could do that. I'm just thinking in terms of timeliness and response to the community. That's just my only reason.
The motion's on the floor, so let's vote on it.
Okay.
That'd be a good thing.
Would you call the roll, Maria?
Lowe,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. Okay, let's see. At this,
We have to
we're,
approve the
still
agendas.
have to vote on
The amended.
acceptance of the consent and regular agendas as amended. I had one other issue, actually, on the consent agenda, which was item D. It's the professional services agreement with Abba Marsh to prepare a drinking water asset management plan. I wonder if we can move that to new business as well. I'd like to talk about some of the concerns I have about that contract. Anybody object to that? Okay. So Maria, where are we putting that?
We moved the,
F.
Karen's motion to consent, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Then this moving consent agenda item
Did we move
D.
it, I'm sorry, did we move it to consent or the regular consent? Okay.
Consent agenda item D would be moved to new business F.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Can we vote on approval of the consent and regular agendas as amended, please?
Cummins,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. Okay. We're moving on to the call to the audience. At this time, and this is one of 2 opportunities. At this time, members of the audience may address council on any item, whether on the agenda or not. Those addressing council are asked to provide their name and address and will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. Council will hear all comments for future consideration, but will not have a response at this time. Those not physically present who would like to may call in at 616-935-3285. If it continues ringing, please remain on the line until your turn, and we'll take all callers.
Gerald Witherell, 527 Butler. I've been on the BLP board for nearly 18 years, and I have never seen such alarming treatment of the BLP board as I have this past year. With regard to the August 3rd meeting that is at the center of Mrs. Pell's complaint to HRC, I would like to note that from the very beginning, the matter was only escalated because of the select few who spoke during that particular meeting, along with others who were not even in attendance, but had watched the meeting afterward on a recorded video. What actually occurred during that August 3rd meeting and what has been perceived by the outspoken handful of people who have personal vendettas against the BLP are 2 different realities. This is a political dispute between board members and has been blown way out of proportion. Let's get this clear. The HRC, City Council, Attorney Bolche, and others have all come to the agreement that discrimination against Director Andrew Hendricks during the August 3rd BLP meeting based on her gender could not be proven. End of story. Does the BLP have some work to do in regard to improving relations among board members? Absolutely. Is the BLP committed to working on how better board members through further testing to our full board and training, such as implicit bias training and additional board governance training? Of course. It takes all of us to work transparently together and not just the select few behind closed doors. For nearly a century, the Board of Light and Power continues to provide its customers among the lowest utility rates in Michigan, while at the same time providing an exemplary level of service and minimal service disruptions. The city and neighboring communities have every reason to be proud of their local utility. We pride ourselves to provide affordable, reliable utility service to over 14,800 customers in the cities of Grand Haven, Ferrisburg, Grand Haven, Spring Lake, and Robinson Township. We are responsible to all ratepayers, not just the City Council, and remain committed to ensuring superior levels of affordability, reliability, and sustainability for all of our customers. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Sarah Howard, and I am a resident here of the city of Grand Haven, but I'm here tonight not in my private citizen capacity, but in my capacity as counsel for BLP Director Andrea Hendrick. I'm here on her behalf tonight to address one of the issues that's on your agenda, which is the presentation of the report by your Human Relations Commission. And there are a couple of brief topics I would like to address, and I hope that I'm not taking this out of order, but I wanted to be sure that I had an opportunity to address the council on these issues on behalf of Andrea. First of all, I would say that the report does find that there was an inability to determine the presence of sex or gender discrimination. But I think some of the larger issues go beyond that question here and present a couple of opportunities for this council. First, my client significantly disagrees with the position statement that was submitted on behalf of the board by the attorney that the board majority hired. I have a great deal of respect for that attorney. I've known her for many years in the Grand Rapids legal community, but she's representing a client just like I am. And I think that it's important to remember that they had legal counsel, and my client is relying solely on me, who's providing pro bono counsel. My client was not contacted for an interview, and this is not the HRC, who I believe did a good job with this report, isn't set up to be a fact-finding body. They're not represented by counsel other than some advice by the city attorney, I would imagine, if they asked for it, but that's not what they've been set up by this body with funds or an investigator to do. Yet they still presented a solid report that described why they have concerns that they do about the way in which your Board of Light and Power is operating. And I think that those concerns should be addressed by this council. I think there are some deeply troubling issues there, even without a finding of gender discrimination. I think that the statement that was posted on the Board of Light and Power's webpage about this report is very illustrative of part of the problem, frankly. There's not a lot of recognition, in my view, about some of these issues and about the way in which the business gets described. However, my client wants to move on from this, and my client wants to
Set that down for a second. Go ahead.
And my client wishes to move forward in a productive manner and feels that with the recent addition of Director Knoth, that things have been moving in that direction, and she merely wants to do her job. I would point out also that I think this is, as a city resident and as counsel for Ms. Hendrick, I think that if you're going to, there might be times when it's appropriate to commission a report or a mediation such as is suggested by the HRC, and you might want to consider as a city council having some policies or procedures or rules to guide that type of endeavor, if you're going to do that and not make a decision situation by situation when they present themselves. That might be something that you want to consider doing as a city council. I'm happy to answer questions on behalf of my client when you get to the point in the agenda where you're actually going to speak about this, but I wanted to be sure I had an opportunity on her behalf to preview those issues and her positions on those
Thank
things. Thank you.
Could you tell me your name one more time?
Sarah, how?
Thank you.
Hi, Steve Miller, 1540 Penoyer. I just wanted to stop in once more and express my hope that the City Council will okay the dining on Washington Avenue this coming summer. I'm sure that at this point you are aware that the Grand Haven Tribune survey showed that there was support for that, 3-1. And I just wanted to read a short bit of an article that was published in December of 2021. The title of it is, "Yes, Even Walmart Wants to Build Smaller Parking Lots." It says, it turns out Walmart has been quietly reducing its parking ratios for years. Every time we reevaluate, we pull it down a little bit, said John Clark, the head of real estate for Walmart, in a report on parking reform published this year by the Institute for Transportation and Development Policy. At the peak of its parking investment, Walmart was building 6 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet of store. Now we are willing to have as few as 4 spaces per 1,000, said Clark. That means on a big store, we went from 1,200 to 800 spaces. It has a big impact on the size of the land needed for the store, the cost of striping and cleaning the parking lots, and even just to park it at night. It is a significant cost factor for the facility to have one less stall. Fast forward to 2021, and most of the spots that the Wood Village Walmart Supercenter added are no longer in use at all. In fact, Walmart has chained off about 25% of its parking lot, effectively shrinking it to a ratio of 3.5 spaces per 1,000 square feet. Even on Black Friday afternoon, the busiest shopping day of the year, the lot was still nowhere near full. Cities and businesses all across America are realizing that it's stupid to be wasting money on empty parking spaces, and I hope that that understanding is going to penetrate to Grand Haven. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Good evening. My name is Todd Crum, 415 Sandpiper. I am a BOP board member. In regards to new business B, it is my understanding that the person who filed these alleged allegations, Elizabeth Bell, is not just some random concerned citizen, but she shares the same address of Councilman McLaughlin, who has been a very harsh critic of the Board Light and Power. As a city leader, I find this troubling. There's been much said around our community.
Todd, could you excuse me one second? Steve and Field? Steve and Field, could you please either take your conversation outside or curtail it so that Todd can be heard? I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. There's been much said around this community concerning these allegations, and it's about time the whole story be told. You know, my family has lived in this community for 5 generations now. We work, we shop, go to church, socialize. My granddaughter goes to school here. These allegations don't only tarnish the good reputation of the BOP, but also good people. The following statement is taken directly from the investigation prepared by Varnum attorney Elizabeth Skaggs, who was appointed by MPIA a self-group insurance pool for municipal power companies. To defend and identify BOP board members of this issue, quote, based on the foregoing, Ms. Pell's allegation that Director Hendrick was discriminated against and or harassed based on her gender during the August 3rd meeting is meritless. This is a wide-ranging political dispute between parties with differing opinions regarding the BOP. A dispute that involves clashing personalities, a disabled former board chair, and difficult behavior by a relatively new board member who has made repeated personal attacks on other BOP board members and staff. What it is not is gender discrimination or harassment against that relatively new board member. Accordingly, the Commission should issue a finding that gender discrimination has not been shown and dismiss the complaint in this matter. End of quotes. With the above statement being said, City Council should now issue a finding that gender discrimination has not been shown and dismiss the complaint in this matter. On a different subject, about the diesel plant. You can extend the sale of the diesel plant all you want, but no matter what you do there, it's not going to fix the fact that there is a parking problem for an event center and everything else the developer wants to squeeze onto the property. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
Hello, Bob Minutz at 945 Washington Avenue. First, I'd like to thank you for taking the time put on your agenda to take a stance for diversity, equity, and inclusion in support of long-held principles by the city, and contrary to the apparent stance of the Auto Impact Group at the county. So thank you for that. I would like to encourage you to approve the use of Washington Block, closing the Washington Block in support of the social district and the casual gathering activity that it's intended to foster as proposed by the DDA. During the pandemic, we introduced on-street dining to Washington. It provided a whole new ambiance to the district. It was very well received, and it's proven that we can do more with our streets than simply drive on them and park in them. I think that was a good outcome, and it's had a long-lasting effect, and I'd like to see that sort of thing encouraged and made good use of. I have to say that we did keep the half of Washington open on that block for traffic and for parking, and the concrete barriers were not the most attractive thing we ever did see, but they did serve their function, and it was an experiment. Successful in many ways and not in all others. Having said all that, I suggest that you carefully monitor and document the usage of that space. There was plenty of times I went down there and I saw that it was heavily used, busy with people. Plenty of other times there wasn't a soul there because it was either mid-afternoon or late afternoon or nobody was open, or for one reason or another the space was closed at all times, and yet it was not used at all times. So I think there's a place for this activity and a good use for it. It needs to be carefully thought out, monitored. Take this next year and think carefully about what successive years might look like. You may find that there's other ways of doing this which will allow partial access, intermittent access. There's probably a lot of different ideas you could explore. But I encourage you to keep an open mind, explore these thoughts, and keep the downtown district vibrant, active, and don't be afraid of change. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Evening, Mayor, Council, and Administration. Thanks.
Jim, you're all done.
Yeah, I'm done. My name's Jim
Can
Hagan.
whoever it is, hang on one second, Jim.
Okay.
Can we silence the cell phone? Thanks. All right.
Jim Hagan, 400 Lake. I've got two topics. The first is the diesel plant. Vote no on further due diligence extensions. The new request for an additional 60-day extension indicates that environmental issues are more severe than originally anticipated by the proposed purchaser. with the elevation of the basement at or near river level, removal of soil and foundations for the engines and generators beneath will be extremely difficult and costly. It should have been anticipated that diesel fuel oil and lube oil would be present, plus asbestos and other materials that would be present in old power production sites. Time is critical, the building's deteriorating, common sense dictates a new direction. Pull the plug, pull it now. It is time to move on to more reasonable options. An event center with no parking never made sense. The original capstone proposal to build condominiums did make sense. The present buy-sell should be left to expire and a new RFQ issued which includes the ability of the purchaser to build condominiums. All environmental cleanup costs should be the responsibility of the purchaser and not passed on to city residents or BLP ratepayers. Thank you.
Good evening. Mike Westbrook, 423 Lafayette Avenue. As Board of Light and Power Chairman, I'm here tonight to shed light on tonight's agenda item under new business, consideration by the City Council of a resolution to adopt the report and recommendations made by our own Human Relations Commission in regard to the complaint of alleged discrimination. The BLP's position statement prepared by Elizabeth Skaggs, the Varnum attorney appointed by MPA to defend and indemnify the Board of Light and Power, our board members and executive staff regarding this complaint, is in your packet tonight and available to the public. I have a copy here if anyone would like to have a copy. And thank you for putting in the packet. I appreciate that, Council. Ms. Skaggs is here tonight. She's sitting next to me or behind me over there. And she's available to you, and we make her available to you to answer any questions you might have during your discussions tonight on the HRC statement. The complaint alleging discrimination against BLP Director Andrea Hendrick by her fellow BLP board members at the August 3rd, 2022 BLP board meeting has been thoroughly investigated by the HRC. Other attorneys, including City Attorney Ron Bulchey, have all acknowledged that discrimination based on gender against Director Hendrick during that meeting could not be proven and was not established. We take the HRC's recommendations at the BLP very seriously and recognize all on the BLP board need to do better in terms of board and community relations. I'm happy to announce tonight we have scheduled Ken James, Chief Diversity Officer at Muskegon Community College, to conduct implicit bias training for the board and executive staff next month. That's got to be approved by our board at our next Thursday meeting, but he's earmarked for February training. We're working with Michigan Municipal League to provide additional Open Meetings Act and parliamentarian procedures training for all board members as recommended by the HRC. So 2 recommendations we took with merit and are already working on implementing them. We strongly wish to engage in mediation between the City Council and BLP as recommended by the HRC. I hope in your discussions tonight you don't glaze over that item. Mediation will only help our 2 bodies work together on all matters moving forward. And I think that, the HRC has called for mediation. I personally feel like we need mediation. We've got issues to solve. Let's get the mediation scheduled. Since the HRC's report, the BLP board has been working diligently towards becoming a more cohesive entity. All of us at the BLP, board members and staff, have taken this allegation seriously, as I've said before. This does not reflect who we are in the community, nor the ideals or values we uphold as an organization. Again, we do need to make sure we all understand this issue is not a one-sided issue, and Ms. Skaggs' report points out some very important details. Director Hendrick has a history of issuing discriminatory public statements toward BLP board members and staff long before the August 3rd board meeting. For example, last February, most board members readily accepted a new seating arrangement that was put in place to accommodate the then BLP chair's profound hearing loss. Director Hendrick, the only board member, became upset with this new arrangement because she was no longer be able to be visible on camera, and Director Hendrick made mockery of my friend Larry Keith's disability and said, "My disability is not being seen on camera," and that was memorialized in video.
Okay, Mike, I'm going to ask you to cut it there, if you will. I think most of that is in your submission. I think council members have all...
I think everybody got a little more time. I've just got one more paragraph, Mayor.
All right, go ahead.
All right. Director Hendrick's complaint is based on actions that took place 5 months ago. I became chair September 2022. The HRC concluded its review of this complaint and again determined discrimination could not be proven and was not established. The BLP is currently taking actions that the HRC recommended from this months-long investigation. It's time to put this matter to bed, and I'm glad to hear Andrea wants to put it to bed too. And getting back to the getting engaged, I'd really like tonight when you discuss this amongst you, I'd like you to keep that mediation recommendation at top of mind and make a serious consideration for mediation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Wells Skaggs, and I'm the attorney who prepared the report, the position statement that you all have in your packets tonight. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm representing the BLP, certain directors of the BLP, and the executive staff of the BLP. I was retained, as many of you know, by the MPIA to provide a defense in this particular situation. Just a couple of comments, a couple of things I would like to highlight. First off, I very much appreciate Attorney Howard's comments tonight. I have the same respect for her. I think there have been some very positive comments tonight about how the BLP can move forward, and we look forward very much to working with the City Council to enacting some of the recommendations that the HRC had in their report, including, most importantly, the recommendation for mediation between the City Council and the BLP, because obviously there have been some issues of disagreement, and this presents a real opportunity. And I would also like to reiterate what Director Westbrook already mentioned about implicit bias training, which the BLP has scheduled for the month of February. It will need to be voted on at the next board meeting. They will be utilizing Mr. Ken James from Muskegon Community College, who was specifically acknowledged and recognized by the HRC during their October meeting as an appropriate, or one of the members, I'm sorry, of the HRC, as an appropriate individual to conduct this training. So they're very much looking forward to that. The BLP recognizes the importance of these issues to an effective functioning board and is looking forward to that. Also, as Director Westbrook indicated, they are bringing in the Michigan Municipal League to conduct Open Meetings Act and board governance training. This will build on training that they already routinely provide to directors, but I think this will further improve relations within the organization. So thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have when you discuss this on the agenda later. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. John O'Connor, 18 Washington, Long Road Distillers. I'm here tonight to speak in support of item 10D, the approval for the closure of Washington Street between Harbor and First for outdoor dining and social district enhancements. I've spoken to most of you many times about this issue, and I just appreciate your continued discussion as an opportunity to have that street area closed. I think it's really an exercise in vibrancy. You have done an amazing job as a community of helping hospitality businesses navigate the challenges of COVID to the point former Mayor Manetza brought up tonight. It's started as one thing and evolved every year into something. I think that's a credit to all those here at the City of Grand Haven and all the businesses involved, that we've taken lessons we've learned every year and not been afraid to make change. I think that's a testament to all of us, that we look at what's worked and what hasn't worked, and we're not afraid to say that didn't work, and we're willing to try something new or try to do something better. You have what I consider to be the best social district anywhere in the state of Michigan. They're located all throughout communities along the lake shore and in Michigan, and I've visited many of them myself. I've talked to folks who've been all around Michigan, and Grand Haven has done it the best, and I really just want to see this continue to be there. We're committed to being at the table to be a partner in making whatever improvements necessary to make it higher functioning and better for families and individuals to visit and enjoy. I talk to folks that live in Grand Haven who maybe don't normally come downtown during the summer months because of the high traffic volume, but have made a concerted effort to now come downtown and spend more time in the downtown community because they feel like it's a much friendlier, easier place to be, and they really enjoy it. talked to many of our patrons at Long Road Distillers. I think some of them may have even written you letters, who are just like, who say to us all the time, if not for this social district, we wouldn't be down here, several nights a week, playing beanbags, hanging out with our kids, bringing friends from neighboring communities or the township who don't normally come downtown. And we just want to continue to see that be you have a vibrant, high-functioning downtown, and I want to see that continue. So I encourage and hope that you support item 10D. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. John Morgan, 119 Washington, 206 Washington. And I appreciate the diversity of opinion on the issue of the street closure at Washington. But I'm here to reach out to you one last time on behalf of the downtown business owners and operators I represent. First, we are strongly against closing Washington Avenue on a busy Saturday for niche interests, interest events like the proposed Jeep rally in May. Even the broader appeal Big Car Show is typically held on the less traffic Sundays. It's one thing for art fairs and other large events with wide appeal to ask merchants to block the street, but this is too narrow a draw and too much another deterrent to the average resident or visitor to come down. We are just getting our summer season started, and Saturdays are good business traffic days. Save the boutique events for a little Sunday boost, or move them somewhere else. Second, and most important, the submitted petition, which I gave you when I was here last time, asks you to please not close our street and commandeer our key public parking for the special interests of a few bars and restaurants and their handful of supporters. It's not fair and it's not effective. We all lose parking and customer access in exchange for the promise of diners and drinkers that will patronize our businesses. But most of us really don't see that promise fulfilled. For most of us, 2022 sales were generally softer than the last year the street was open. Hey, I'd love to be getting some of those spaces that Walmart is giving up. If they got 3.5 spaces for every 1,000 square feet, boy, that'd be great. I'll take that any day of the week. Those places are vast. I don't really think it's a good comparison. We see a street mostly empty during the summer that this event or this closure is taking place. Sure, you get busy a weekend or an evening, but it's most of the time it's way underutilized, and it's a big price we pay. We see bars and restaurants that don't even bother to be open much of that time. So they're closing our street, taking our parking, and they're not even in use. And when they are open, much of their internal space and even some of their own outdoor space is not being utilized. I guess I would really like to see what happened to Kirby Grills, open harborfront dining area this last summer. It didn't look to me like it was being used at all. So for that reason, we just don't see it being effective at what you were trying to achieve. 45 businesses signed the petition from the affected area, not because we are resistant to change, but because we're on the ground and we see firsthand it helps a few, but it hurts many others, including driving away many local residents. I'm sure that the bars and restaurants have had some good results, but I can tell you for sure that there's a lot of people who don't come down because it's just too crowded, and now with the street being blocked.
Need to wrap it up.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so we're not asking to take something away from others, as our opponents are, but to simply keep things the way they were, the way that has allowed downtown Grand Haven to be the inviting and vibrant community it already is. We are the overwhelming majority stakeholders. We are the overwhelming majority stakeholders in the affected 3 blocks of downtown Washington Avenue, and we are asking you not to do this again. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Doug Vance, 100 Washington. I think maybe Steve hit on a solution to a number of problems. Maybe we can invite Walmart to build a store downtown Grand Haven and they'll solve all our parking problems. aside from that, I've gone over this, and the latest Grand Haven Main Street newsletter, I think, speaks for itself. The picture that is on the front of that shows exactly what the situation really is. There's nobody there. Why are we doing this? Why? For a few days when it's packed and the rest of the time it's closed, which negatively impacts the majority of businesses that are downtown. If you're going to close the first block, close all 3 blocks, give everybody the same advantage. There are, to my estimation, at least 3 attorneys on the DDA board. I, for the life of me, cannot figure out why nobody has brought up the liability that this is creating. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when somebody's going to get hit and be seriously injured, if not killed, because they were walking around with a drink that who's monitoring this? I, as a bar owner, I'm required to have somebody in the building at all times when we're open, monitoring, make sure nobody is over drinking. Who's monitoring that on the street? Who? I have not, quite honestly, seen any public safety officers down there strolling around. Maybe they have, but it certainly isn't on a permanent or even a basis where they could say, we're there. I do know that on weekends, at least on weekends, they're sitting waiting at midnight for people to walk out of Tippecanoe and follow them and make sure that they haven't had too many. But are they going to be doing that to all the exits of the social district, especially the first block, if you're going to close this down? I mean, it's discriminatory against the other businesses. We have a patio. That was part of our decision in bringing the Copper Post to where it is today. We pay taxes for that space. It's there. We've gained nothing. When I tried to gain extra space during the pandemic, I was rejected. We had it all set. I mean, nobody gave me any explanation for that whatsoever. I don't get it. Why are we discriminating for a few businesses? And I get it. Long Road, I mean, expands their space, probably triples their space. So I get it. It's a definite advantage. But what about all the other businesses down there? What about the retail businesses that are close by them that are suffering because of that? I would thank you for voting no on that item tonight.
No, these are not notes. Hi, I'm Kelly Larson, 114 Washington, 14-0. Thank you for your appointment to the GDA, and the last couple of months have been very interesting because being in this downtown district, our neighbors, we differ very often, and I want to say that you all and Jeremy have done a really great job of trying to create, we're all here for the betterment of Grand Haven. I do disagree with John on one thing. I think the Jeep Fest has done a good job of being considerate to our feelings and has changed their date, and I am 100% in favor of Jeep Fest. I'm sorry, John, you are not, but that's okay. That's what builds a good Grand Haven. So you have a lot on your plate, and I just wanted to thank you for your service in helping make our town better. So thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
I'm Jason Rogers. I'm a director for Grand Haven Jeep Fest, and I'm here if you have questions. I'll keep it short. That's it.
Okay, moving on. We're going to move to the, Mary, come on up.
Hi, Mary Janice. I own Calico Cat, and I lived at 8 Clinton Avenue. I've read John's letter to you.
One second. Shut that off if you can, Ashley, and we'll pick it up later. Okay, please go ahead, Mary.
I read John's letter, and I think he did a fantastic job with the letter that he just sent to you. But I have 5 points that I guess I need to say again, and I've said them many times. It didn't work. It was a dead zone all summer, other than a few weekends and Friday and Saturday. It was empty the rest of the time. The other thing is, I feel like it cuts the downtown off from the waterfront. If you're driving down Harbor Drive, it's blocked off, and the waterfront is blocked off coming down the street, down Washington, going west. You don't see the waterfront anymore. And I think probably our most important thing in the downtown is being attached to the waterfront. The other thing is the terrible traffic pattern it creates by closing this down. I think last year they were going to close it off at First, and I asked that it be opened, the entrance into the parking lot at Harborfront be opened, which they did. But you're still making 2 left-hand turns in traffic, and it could be a lot of traffic to even get into that parking lot, going down First and then going down Columbus. And you know, the people that come into town maybe don't know how to get around. This just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. The other thing that really bothers me is that I think the downtown merchants really spoke to what they feel like, and I don't feel like the DDA board gave any consideration to us at all. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. Okay. I'm going to ask, well, first I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended. Yep, looks like we have a call. Final call.
Okay, caller, you can go ahead.
Hello?
You are on. If you could please introduce yourself.
My name is Cecil Bradshaw. I live at 31 Sherman Avenue, and the subject matter tonight is the diesel plant. And I've made my opinion known, guys, for a period of time, because that plant project does not meet the city ordinances, particularly for parking. It has been 6 months since Lakewood has had to do due diligence. They were at the Planning Commission meeting in June. At that meeting, parking was the primary issue, and the Planning Commission gave them some suggestions they had to come back with for resolving that issue. It's been 6 months, and they have not been back to the Planning Commission. I know that they are looking for some brownfield development grant money. If they were really serious, why would they not have been to the Planning Commission since last June to resolve the parking issue that they said they'd be back with some alternative plans? I think it's absolutely foolish for this city council to entertain extending that due diligence period. I don't believe they're really serious. There are better options out there. There have been other offers made that have generate more money. This proposal, unless it's been changed significantly, cannot meet the zoning ordinances. And I believe that the city council needs to recognize that, and that they do not put this onto the Planning Commission at next month's meeting for them to have to deal with it again. It does not meet the ordinances. There is no parking within 400 feet of that building outside of the parking places that are on that site. So I encourage the city council to deny extending the due diligence period to CL Lakewood. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecil. All right. The consent agenda as amended, I would entertain a motion to approve it.
I'll make the motion.
I'll support.
Maria, would you please read it aloud?
Mm-hmm. Item A, approval of council special work session minutes of December 19, 2022, and regular meeting minutes of December 19, 2022, and January 3, 2023. Approve the bills memo in the amount of $895,822.63. C, receive and confirm a revised Hart Solar Power Purchase Commitment Authorization by the Board of Light and Power under its Energy Services Agreement with MPPA. Our new item D, approve the Central Park Place sign bid in the amount of $14,844 with Postuma Signs and Graphics, Grand Haven, Michigan, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. E, approve a special event request to hold Grand Haven Free Friday Night Concert Series at the Lynn Sherwood Waterfront Stadium from 6 p.m. until 8:30 p.m. on July 7, 14, 21, and August 11, 18, 25 of 2023, allow the use of green room space in the depot, reserve parking spaces in the marina parking lot, and supply a $500 discount to the rental fees as outlined in the City of Grand Haven's special event policy. F, approve a special event request to hold Music on the Grand at the Lynn Sherwood Waterfront Stadium on Wednesdays from 6:30 p.m. until 9 p.m., beginning June 7 through August 30, except during Coast Guard Festival. Reserve 5 parking spaces in the marina parking lots and apply a $500 discount to the rental fees as outlined in the City of Grand Haven's special event policy. G, approve a special event request to hold World Book Day on Sunday, April 30th, 2023, in Central Park from 12 p.m. until 5 p.m. H, approve an application from Lucy's Deli for a social district permit contiguous to the Commons area designated by the Council and pursuant to MCL 436.1551 for consideration and approval by the Michigan Liquor Control Commission. I, consideration of I direct city staff and HRC to draft a statement reaffirming our city's stance regarding DEI, along with any other recommended actions.
Any discussion? Would you please call the roll?
Cummins?
Yes.
Lowe?
Yes.
McLaughlin?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
McNally?
Yes. All right, moving on to new business. Item A, Maria, would you read it for us? 10A?
Consideration by City Council of a resolution to approve a 60-day extension to the due diligence period, Section 4D, of the purchase and redevelopment agreement with CLRED for the diesel plant property and increase the earnest deposit from the buyer by $10,000. Administration recommends approval.
Okay. We got anybody here that's going to speak to this, Ashley? Or
I'll make a motion.
Make a motion? Thank you, Mike.
I'll support.
Support by Lowe. Is there anybody here that's going to speak to this?
Yeah, I can briefly introduce it, and then Kyle with the Lakewood team is present as well to give you a brief overhead view of where they're at in the project. But as you know, their initial deadline in October of 2022, the development team invoked their 90-day extension that they had by right in their purchase agreement. At this point, their current deadline is this Thursday for that extension. They initially approached us to request a 30-day. Under my suggestion, we increased it to a 60-day to ensure that they could have adequate time before planning commission. So if approved tonight, and Kyle can go over a couple of the delays, but some are also partially the city's issue as well as we navigate our discharge permit going forward and how it affects their funding and environmental due diligence as well. But they, if approved tonight for the extension, they will be at the February 14th Planning Commission. They have submitted a number of their site plan requirements to Brian for approval, so they will fully intend to be at that February 14th meeting.
That's going to be February 14th at the Planning Commission?
Correct.
Okay. We got
And then-
anything they want either to ask Ashley or ask Kyle?
Would like Kyle just to give a brief update.
Thank you for your time tonight, Council. Really appreciate it. So since the last time we've been here, we've been pretty busy at work. The biggest update, and I'll try to keep it brief because you guys got a lot on your agenda tonight. The last round of environmental testing that we did on the property actually came back so low that it was somewhat inconclusive if it would trigger Eagle funding or not. So we were recommended to do additional testing to be able to see if it's really triggering that level or not. We have received the testing results, and Fishbeck is currently reviewing them. We would just be trying to cram it in too fast and too furious to try and get all of that dialed in a letter written by Fishbeck. So they did provide a letter substantiating that to you guys, which is part of the packet today. So that is trending very well. It may be unfortunate for us with some of the funding resources, but hey, it's good and it's bad news all at the same time. The biggest issue, though, is this oil water separator and the discharge into the Grand River and the responsibility of the city in that. And so we started that conversation with city staff. We understand city's been meeting internally on that. It's not a large dollar ticket item, but it is of importance with the discharge into the Grand River. So we just want to make sure we're I's dotted and T's crossed with the responsibility of that. And then site plan review, we've been in a lot of contact the last number of weeks with city staff. And as of this afternoon, we submitted a whole number of documents to city staff for conversation and meeting in preparation for the planning meeting next month.
Is the oily water separator something that, like, stormwater discharge is running through? And is the sense that it's because the soil at the site is so saturated with diesel? No. So
that's what needs to get figured out on the BPW side with city staff. It's not completely related to the building. It's pulling in some other avenues that need to be just I's dotted and T's crossed.
Diverted from, there's water draining through the property
Correct.
from other areas?
Correct.
Okay.
And that we don't know exactly where it's all coming from, and that's what needs to get worked through.
Okay. And Ashley, Derek's on that?
Yep, Derek's on it, and we have initiated conversation with Lakeshore Environmental just to get a better grasp of what we're working with, as well as talking to our neighbors across the street, our federal property in which our discharge permit runs underneath. So it's a little more complicated and time-consuming than initially we had thought.
The Coast Guard or the Corps?
So I guess Derek explained to me it's the Coast Guard that it runs under, but they lease from the Corps.
Yeah.
So
okay, all right.
So,
folks, go ahead, Kevin.
So Derek, can this be resolved in 60 days?
Derek Gatis, Public Works Director for the city. I believe so. The permit can be transferred at any time, and then those conditions on which Eagle will place on that permit should be the same conditions that we have today. So we just renewed the permit into our name or transferred it from BOP and it renewed. So everything we have is what they should be able to inherit within any period of time.
So we're expecting to keep the discharge and put the permit in our name.
So the permit is already in our name.
Okay.
And then so we would transfer it into their name.
Into
Seal
Seal
Lake
Red?
Woods.
Okay. All right.
And you'll accept that, Kyle?
That's what we haven't gotten all that feedback back. That's the first I've heard of that. So that's
Okay.
where it's all coming together pretty quickly here. And so we haven't had a chance to review that. That's where Ashley was saying city staff has been meeting internally.
Okay. Anything else, Kevin?
The earnest money of $10,000, have you agreed to that?
Yeah, we actually proposed it.
That's nice. So you feel pretty confident in those 60 days?
We do.
Do you feel confident enough to make the earnest money non-refundable?
I'd have to look back to the language of the original earnest money, but I believe that was the intent of the original earnest money anyway.
Yeah, I'm happy to address that if you'd like, Mayor.
Sure. Go ahead, Ron.
There is a differentiation with the earnest money after a certain number of days. Some of it becomes non-refundable. However, this is an extension of the environmental due diligence period, and the agreement, the buy-sell agreement, says that if the termination is made during the environmental review period, earnest money is returned to the buyer. So the increase will not help the city if the termination occurs during the environmental review period.
Question stays the same.
Good question, then. I'm not at liberty to speak on that without the entire team. Good question, though.
Okay, well, it's something that, we would surely appreciate, because it's, we continue to stretch this out, and it's costing us a boatload of money.
Understood.
As you can, so to help us out, we'd appreciate that. Is there any other contingencies that except for the planning commission, we understand that, but that's about it?
Yep.
Everything else is pretty well cleared in your mind.
Correct.
You mentioned, Ashley mentioned that you do have a couple of tenants that you're looking at?
Correct.
How solid is it? You get some letter of agreement, or is it still just?
We have draft LOIs out to 2 of them.
Okay.
So we're working through that with them right now.
Okay. I think the parking issue, if you get through that, I mean, that's surely the planning commission, I think we all were concerned about that, so.
Understood.
I wish you all the luck.
Mike?
That's it for me.
Got anything?
Just talking from experience that I'm going through is that I know what delays are, and I know pieces of property which is out in the township that's been taking them almost a year now to finally come to fruition, going through all the different steps for remediations and everything else in that order. It takes a lot of time and a lot of due diligence for them to do it. So I know exactly what you're going through. I understand. And I'm willing to go for another little short extension. I'd like to see something come to fruition there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Karen?
No, I'm good.
Ryan?
I guess I'm going to say this maybe a little bit more strongly than Councilmember McLaughlin. I'm not willing to agree to an extension that doesn't guarantee that all of that earnest money basically come to us if you back out for environmental reasons anymore. I think we've had that time period, and that's been in place. I think it does nothing if we increase your earnest deposit by $10,000, and you want the extension for more environmental due diligence, which I understand. We have pretty significant carrying costs at this point, month to month. We're close to $9,000 to $10,000. So I think we need some protection to say, hey, if we're going to continue on with this path and evaluating this, that if you back out, then that would be, I think, a condition that I would be comfortable with approving. If folks from your end aren't willing to agree to that, then ultimately, because I talked with our city manager about the fact that I felt that we needed actually written addendum that both parties were signing to this agreement. There's some draft language that's ready to go. I don't know how quickly you can assemble your team to, assess that. Obviously, it sounds like you have a couple more days before we're actually at the very end of, your most recent extension before you might have to make a decision on that. But I'm just one council member, so perhaps the others may not feel that same way. But
I agree. The $10,000 shouldn't be returnable. That's what it should be, because exactly what's happening with out in the township is that they've been making extensions and they've been giving $10,000 each time, but it's non-returnable at the time. So I'm with you. I really think we need some kind of dedication of that money to stay here with us. If we're going to give them the extension, that $10,000 is not going to be refundable. That has to stay here no matter what it ends up as. Help cover some of the costs that we've had. I would like to see that if I could.
Your Honor.
Yep.
Ron, what are our options what are our options at this point, given with the earnest money you stated in this stage per the contract that we signed that it would be returnable?
Well, it's returnable as long as the termination occurs during the environmental review period.
Unless in an addendum, we modify the contract.
That is correct, yes.
So we can make our approval of the extension contingent on that earnest money being
non-refundable.
non-refundable.
Correct.
that would supersede what is in the contract.
Unless they don't sign off on it, and then that would be the end, right? I mean,
Right, at this point, the environmental review period is not terminated, has not ended yet. And if they terminate the agreement during the review period, they get their money back. If we revise the agreement with an addendum, then, and both parties agree, then the addendum controls.
Anybody else? I have questions about why you haven't been back to Planning Commission to talk about parking. Because it seemed like at the beginning of this process, you had all kinds of great ideas about we're going to get satellite parking and shuttles back and forth. There are all kinds of ways we can manage this. So is any of that going on, or is that a tail end issue that we're not really ready to address?
Sure, good question. We have been in a lot of talks with Brian, city staff, on options and strategies and workarounds and how to make this all work, where the Planning Commission would be amicable to solutions rather than just throwing things out there that just get shot down and having contentious discussions or meetings. There's also been a lot of due diligence that we've been chasing. This is not just a clean and clear site to be able to just pick it up and run. There's a lot of environmental things that we've had to dot I's, cross T's, and unfortunately that discharge came up kind of last second. That was not in our purview. It was kind of buried in a report, and we finally found it as we were doing a final review. So that was a big deal to us to be able to make sure we gave the city proper time to review that. We only requested 30 days. City came back with, hey, we'd prefer to have 60 days, not only to work through that issue, but also to make sure we preserve a good amount of time for site plan review.
Okay, so it looks like we can vote on this resolution, or we can amend this resolution. Vote to propose an amendment, vote on the amendment, and then vote on that. Brian, it sounds like you're the strongest advocate for non-refundable. Would you make it contingent? The extension contingent on non-refundable earnest money?
correct. That would be.
Are you making just the 10 or the entire?
You know, I think at this point, I'll make the motion for the entire thing, and I think we can have a little bit of discussion on that. I'll put that motion on the floor to amend our current motion that's on the floor to make the earnest money non-refundable, none of the earnest money non-refundable, the original 20,000 plus the additional 10,000 non-refundable.
Is there support for his motion?
I'll second that.
Okay.
And I think it's worthy of discussion.
Is there further discussion?
Right.
Yep. We have significant carrying costs for this property. Just the heating costs alone are in the $10,000 a month range. So when you exercised your extension through this period of time, that was a substantial cost to the city. So we assume you're acting in good faith. I hope you assume we're acting in good faith. We want this to go forward, but I see potential barriers as well. And so we can't hold on to this property indefinitely. I think that's the question. So
the grand totals will be what, $30,000 then?
Karen, you got anything?
If we had closed on time, or if they decided not to go through with this sale based on the due diligence, we wouldn't have that 20,000 anyway. I'm comfortable with just the 10,000 additional earnest money as being non-refundable, if that's something that
Kevin?
the developer would be open to.
I think
I'm still at the 30.
You're at 30?
Yeah.
I would probably split it half non-refundable, half refundable, but I can support 30. This is a deal we're heavily invested in, and it's not as if they walk away, we haven't necessarily, we do have backup offers, and those we can check, but it won't make the property move into private hands more quickly, I think. I think that's, if we assume they're acting in good faith, to me, you also assume they will act as quickly as they can. And I think if this deal falls through, we have a substantial, I think we're gonna end up with a rebidding process probably, and we're another,
A lot more costs on top
a
of
lot
it.
more costs and a lot more time and a lot more uncertainty, and the building deteriorates further. So,
I'm with Karen on the $10,000, to be honest with you.
okay.
Because that's what they're asking for, and that they want to pay it, they have to pay the 10,000.
Okay,
Well,
Ryan?
I'm just playing devil's advocate here, and there's no disrespect to this gentleman in front of us, but I think that he wasn't quite aware even that he could back out and pay nothing with the environmental. So they were expecting, I mean, when you put some earnest money down, I mean, I had a problem with that language originally anyway.
Yep.
I mean, you want to buy a house, you put some earnest money down, and you look at your inspections.
And you're earnest about it.
Right, and you look at your inspections and you're like, I'm not comfortable with this. I mean, I mean, you weigh those things out when you're putting agreements together. And I hope we're all at a point where, like, yeah, they've got a lot of time and money and everything invested in this too. They want to close this. I think we want to protect the other side if it doesn't end at this point with how many months this has gone on. I don't think even the extension was anticipated before, right? I mean, you guys were really pushing us to get a deal done so you guys could look at some of the environmental, and I don't think we even anticipated the extension, and
Okay. So the motion on the floor is grant the extension contingent upon an addendum to the contract which makes the $30,000 earnest money non-refundable. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, and there's a second from Kevin?
Yes.
Well, there was a motion made to amend the first motion, right? There was an original motion to grant the request as made.
Correct.
So this is just so the first vote would be to amend the original motion.
Correct. That's correct.
There are going to be two votes.
Yes, there will be. Yep.
We know.
Thank you, Ron. So we're voting on whether or not to amend the original motion.
Mhm.
But the amendment we would support would be for the entire earnest money.
That's correct.
Okay. To be non-refundable. So whether to amend or not, Maria, would you please call the roll?
Cummins,
yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Fritz,
I'm debating on this one. No.
Lowe,
No.
McNally.
Yes.
This passes.
All right, so now we need to vote on the motion itself, which is, it would use the same language, Maria,
Mm-hmm.
I think, except, so consideration by City Council of a resolution to approve a 60-day extension to the due diligence period for the diesel plant property and increase the earnest deposit by $10,000 contingent upon the entire earnest money deposited, to wit $30,000, becoming non-refundable should the deal not close as expected. Is that sufficient, Ron?
Yes.
Okay. Fritz,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you, Kyle.
We hope you're coming back.
I'll be back.
All right. We're now at new business item B. Would you read it for us, please?
Consider, oh, wait a second. Consideration by the City Council of a resolution to adopt the report and recommendations made by the Human Relations Commission in regards to a complaint of alleged discrimination.
Can I get a motion to that effect?
So moved.
And is there support for that motion?
Support?
Motion by Fritz, second by Lowe. Discussion?
Is it possible, Mayor, to, I think Ms. Worksman's here from the HRC, and this is their report they're submitting, to possibly hear from her? And
Luann, are you the spokesperson?
Yes, Mayor, I am.
Okay.
I brought myself here on behalf of the HRC to answer any questions you might have from the report. Does anybody have any questions?
I just want to say thank you for your hard work that you guys did on here and on the due diligence and going through it all and coming to the recommendations that you have. So thank you so very much for that. It's very thankful for me to know that we have some places to go with these kind of situations. So thank you again.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate your calling on the HRC for matters like this, and I appreciate citizens. We all appreciate citizens coming to us with these. This is not easy, and on the subject of training, even though we have HR professionals and business professionals serving on the commission, every allegation of discrimination that we've investigated has been different, and you learn something new each time, and you're always surprised by what you find out. And we couldn't have done it without the help of City Attorney Balchi and our city liaison, City Manager Ashley Latch, and our City Clerk Maria Boersma, because the ins and outs of Open Meetings Acts and that sort of thing, when we all come to these volunteer roles, we learn as we go. I want to thank BLP Chair Westbrook for affirming our conclusions, and I just want to say that some of the things that were said earlier only serve, I think, to illustrate that mediation is an important way to move forward. If we're going to be forward-thinking, we can't just be two teams on the field and one is going to walk away with a win and one's going to walk away with a loss. And I think that we need to find the common ground that we all have. And you brought up a really good subject along those lines in the recent actions by the County Commission to dismantle the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office that you, as a city government, our city, helped support and bring into being, and which a lot of financial commitments by the private sector helped to create, and they were all summarily dismissed. And I'm really glad that the BLP has gone to Muskegon Community College, to Ken James, for some of this training, but it was available to us in this county. And our Human Resources Director was able to provide implicit bias training to every single employee and to every volunteer, commission volunteer who wanted it, for $15 a person. And I believe those are the right amounts. And now that has been taken away from us. And I'm really grateful that you're going to consider standing up to that action, because we have a lot going on going forward, and we all need to be working together. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being a great example of it.
okay, a couple questions, Ms.
Yep.
Worksma? A couple
Luann.
questions for you. Yeah, it was mentioned that there was some recommendation for, some kind of mediation between the council and the BLP. I don't see that in your final report. Can you kind of touch on that?
Oh, I thought it was in the final report. Was that removed?
I didn't see it
don't
either.
see
I
that,
read
yeah.
through I've heard the BLP chair say several times, and I saw it in the BLP attorney's statement, but I did not see that recommendation in your report. So I wondered if
We further urge City Council to address this issue as the tip of an iceberg that affects all who work and volunteer on citizen board and commissions.
At the bottom, the second paragraph under recommendations, the very last sentence of that second paragraph, we recommend that the firm employed by the BLP to help the BLP be engaged to improve the following relationships and interactions, and that includes between the BLP and City Council.
No, it doesn't.
That's not in our documents here.
That's, I've been baffled too, Ryan.
You have a 1, 2, 3?
No?
No, I
There
have
were,
1, 2.
there were 3 in the original.
Yeah, there may be a issue with the copy. There was some conversation about whether or not that item was removed from the deliberation, because I was not in attendance, so it may be a matter of the incorrect draft.
And the BLP knows about it because they read that before their attorney made the statement on their behalf. So
Right.
that was in the
saw-
original.
I saw the attorney's statement, and I heard Chairman Westbrook recommend it, but I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. Thank you for
Your Honor,
raising that, Ryan.
just a question so we understand, and that doesn't get lost on it in the context of the discrimination complaint. There was something you wanted us to do here, City Council, better, and that was to get mediation? Is that?
Well, we found rather quickly that we couldn't prove gender discrimination, but we couldn't rule it out either. But what we were very surprised by in our investigation, by the people who came to answer questions, is that there was a great deal of rancor and a great deal of history behind it that over the past several years here in the community the BLP has been at the center of. And we just feel that mediation is an investment in learning about each other. When you take implicit bias training or Open Meetings Act training, you educate yourself. When you have a trained mediator in the room and you are invited to let people learn about you, we learn about each other. And frankly, yes, there have been problems that the BLP and the council in the past, and we just said this was an illustration of something that's been going on for a long time and needs to be addressed.
Okay, could I ask what line 3 is supposed to read?
It said it was between the BLP and City Council.
Between the BLP, all parties in and City Council.
I just want to say thank you for that. No, I got that, because that's something I've been trying for a long time for us to get back together and discussing it. So it's a good recommendation for all of us to follow. So thank you so very much.
Thank you for considering it.
I guess I have a question then, and not just about that, actually. I had it for the other recommendations too. I called the mediator you recommended. I spoke to her, and I liked her a lot, very sharp lady, and she said she'd spoken with you, and I said, is this a business line that you engage in? I said, can you tell me what your business is? And largely, their business is mediation among, it's largely court-ordered, though not all court-ordered, and it's among family groups. Now, I found some irony and some value in relating this to a family group, but in my experience at least, and it's relatively limited, when you go to a mediator, usually you're trying to they're trying to mediate a policy, all right, so that, or a goal, and what it sounds like is what you're really arguing for or recommending is
a referee?
Well, but not a referee on the issues, it doesn't sound like. A referee on the personalities and the acrimony.
That might not be correct, because...
That's not correct, or...
I said that might not be incorrect, I meant to say.
Okay.
Let me go back to what you said about mediation services. That was my personal recommendation. My experience with them and knowledge are different from what you took away from your conversation. In my former role with the Greater Ottawa County United Way, took many community investment panels to hear the presentations from mediation services. And I have spoken to their executive director, Elizabeth Scott, in the context of community issues in the past, and asked for quotes and whether they had the capacity to handle that. And I was assured that they did. Yes, they have contracts with the Justice Department, with the county courts. They have contracts with the ISD to mediate in educational, but they do personal mediation. I've often thought maybe I would hire them, but they assured me that they did have community mediation. And if they do not, I am sure somebody is, but they are a wonderful local resource, and we're not talking thousands of dollars.
She said they had a suite of something called restorative practices that might be adapted to, I would have said the first two, but now I'll say all three. But I asked her how that would work in an open meeting, because it seems to me that what it will involve largely is airing grievances. And to be frank, I'm concerned about an open forum to air grievances at a public meeting, and with a quorum present, I don't think we can get around the public meeting. And I'm just trying to figure out how this recommendation works into a governmental setting.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because she said, "Oh, Open Meetings Act." I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure how it would work. I'm not entirely opposed, but I'm not sure. I think the risk outweighs, to me, the benefit if it has to be done, and I think it probably does have to be done at a public meeting. Now, if what you're saying, Luann, is they have, because it sounds like they have presentations, I think we can do a presentation by them without us making any decisions, and that would not necessarily be I think we can do that without a public meeting. We may put a notice of a quorum, but not a public meeting. Ron?
No, I'm not sure about that. I think that if we have a quorum present,
Well, if it's, even if a quorum's present and we decide it's a public meeting and we notice it and people come,
right.
If it's a presentation by them, I don't have any objection to that.
Right.
But at the point at which this group and the BLP, or the BLP members together, or the BLP and their staff start trying to work through, I'm going to call them grievances of some sort, all right? To do it on the public record, in a public forum, to me, is a very challenging thing to do. I may be alone in that, but it's, when I look at that, I don't have a problem with training, I don't have a problem with presentations, but when we say mediation, that usually means two groups come together and try to talk through their differences. And I'm not sure how well that would work in a mediated setting. And I guess the potential is we could try it, and if it blew up, we could shut it down. But I'm concerned about that. That would be the concern I took from what I've read. So, and that was before I knew I was going to be mediated. But I'm okay with that. You guys?
I would just like to weigh in and also thank you and the rest of the Human Relations Commission for the very concise, thorough way you approach this investigation in an open meeting, and thank our city attorney for, everyone for supporting you in that. I thought the report was very clear and did outlined that it was not proven to be based on gender, that there were some concerns about civil discourse. And I think in this country, we need a lot more civil discourse and respect. And I thought your specific recommendations for the BLP staff and directors, appointing a timekeeper during the directors' meeting who'll collect and preserve data on how long and when, so it's more of a monitoring role, recording all requests for information from all directors and what was provided, maintaining records of dates when requests were received and dates information was, transmitted to whom. And then as Chairman Westbrook and Vice Chair Witherell mentioned, the training for the BLP directors on the Opens Meeting Act, Robert's Rules of Order, implicit bias, which they have embraced and already started, which I think is a really great, great next step. But I thought those were very practical solutions that, and I thank you and the rest of the commission for coming up with those.
Thank you. I wish there were an easier way for people to get along. I heard of a term once that applied to nursing training, that a nurse didn't have to love his or her patient, but had to show unconditional positive regard. And I think if we can each give each other unconditional positive regard, and as you so clearly demonstrated earlier on when you had a point of disagreement, you disagreed without being disagreeable, that we can maybe make some progress and maybe fix a few things along the way. So thanks for being willing to listen. Next week, the Human Relations Commission will be working on a response to the DEI closure and some of the comments that were made in the resolution that changed the motto of our county on behalf of 300,000 people by fiat.
Okay, before you go, let me ask if anybody has any further questions.
I just want to thank you, too.
Thank you.
Very good report.
Thank you, Luann.
All right, good night.
All right, so we have a resolution in front of us. I took the liberty of asking the city attorney, what our role should be, and maybe Ron, you could give us a few words on that.
Sure. The mayor and I had a discussion about just what the city council's authority was, and we don't have any authority any more than the HRC has authority to issue commands to the BLP and how it's going to conduct its meetings or conduct its business. The issue as found by the HRC is bigger than just gender discrimination, and that is shown through the report. The report makes recommendations, which is what the HRC may do. It may not go farther than that. It doesn't have directive authority, and frankly, council doesn't have directive authority with regard to the BLP either. Basically what we have is a report from the HRC, which we may accept or reject or modify, but those really are the options in front of us. The HRC report will stand as it is. In any event, whatever we do to it, the HRC's business is concluded. And it is a report to the council, and the ordinance doesn't really have any role for the council to play after that. The HRC has completed its job.
So when Ashley, at our last meeting, basically gave this to us as correspondence, that was sufficient, but to bring it up to the body so that we can discuss it is fine, but we don't have an action role on it. Is that?
Well, yes, you could just accept it in correspondence and do nothing. But given that the HRC makes a recommendation that includes you, And the HRC recommendation.
Didn't until this evening.
Well, actually, I thought it did, because my copy had number 3.
Okay, fair enough.
Just leave it alone.
And the BLP had number 3 as well,
Okay.
because I have the copy that was sent to the BLP. So it was there. And given that the HRC is recommending the BLP consider actions, I think it's appropriate for council to do more than just accept it in correspondence.
Well, okay, and they're also recommending that we consider actions, and I think that's a fair,
I think if you formally accept the report, you are,
well, if we accept the report, all we do is accept it, but if we adopt the recommendations, then we have action to take, and so I think those are, and apparently, there's new information regarding which actions those are. So the motion on the floor right now is adopt the report and recommendations made by the HRC in regard to a complaint of alleged discrimination. And I will tell you, Karen, the timekeeper recommendation I did not agree with. And it's only because I found it impracticable. A lot of times what happens is there's a discussion, and I think the BLP's position that these are recorded events so that the time is easy enough to figure out afterwards in the record of by the recording. It's a much simpler thing than trying in a environment where people are in dialogue trying to record that. I mean, I can't imagine Maria doing that. I can't imagine Maria having an assistant that would be trying to do that. I think it would be very challenging. So the timekeeper part, I didn't, as a recommendation, I didn't agree with.
Your Honor, I think there's different ways we keep time. We have a timer for 3 minutes when people speak, speak
That's
here.
for public comment, though.
Yes,
but
with
not
public
on the
comment.
board.
So I don't know what the intent is from the HRC. It could be a backward-looking, tracking over time to see if minority opinions are indeed, and you can do that by reviewing, video, but someone would have to be assigned to do that. I'm not suggesting they interrupt the flow of their conversation, but sometimes those facts, those times are surprising to people. Sometimes we up here don't realize how much we're monopolizing the conversation. Let's say among the 5 of us, one of us might be talking more, but you can't deny it when you look back, and if someone says, gee, this is how much time, one speaker, just as an awareness, not as something that you would necessarily, publish, but I think it does kind of help, and just say, hey, yeah, maybe we aren't giving a minority view. And I wouldn't have any problem having that kind of a monitoring up here. So I don't want to dismiss these well-thought, recommendations, and we don't have any power to enforce them anyway. But I guess in addition to accepting the report, I would like to see us lead by example by making sure that we all have the training. I know we've had the training on the Open Meetings Act, but the Roberts Rules of Order, maybe not so much, implicit bias. These are things that we can all use better practice and reminders, about. And so I welcome even more than that. And in the instances of the mediation, I do agree with you, Your Honor. I think sometimes it's on an issue, and maybe if we feel, we may have to take a different approach to try how to implement that recommendation, but I certainly am open to doing all of that and feel we can all improve.
Okay. So what are we doing with this resolution?
I'm just
Mike?
going
Yep.
to say one thing here, is that long-winded Sometimes I get long-winded, sometimes I'm short and to the point. We don't need the time here. It's not as if you're having some come up for public comment. They want to hear our opinion. We want to speak out what we need to speak out, and you don't need to have a time for us up here. I feel my time is my time here. What I'm doing right now, I'm talking, just as you have. We let you speak as long as you wanted to. You just have to respect each other up here and let us each voice our opinions and get it out there. And that's how we work together. I mean, it took me some time to figure out. I've been on council for a long time, and I've had to figure out each other council members on there, how to work with them. And that's what you do. We're all different. We all have to work together. I have to agree with the mayor as far as timing for us. The time is not an essence here for us. The time is actually for public comment. When they come in, we give them 3 minutes, and if they have something, we let them run over. It's not a big deal. But it doesn't matter if you have 5 minutes and I have 2 minutes, and Kevin ends up with 20. It doesn't make any difference. We all have our opinions, and we need to express it. I have to agree. I'm not so much on timing thing for when it comes to us.
I think it's fair to say that if there's a member who isn't given an opportunity to express views freely and frankly,
absolutely,
that's wrong. And if there's a member who routinely is given less time to address issues, that's wrong. I think that's fair to say. And I think that we need to all strive to run a board in a way that allows the people at the board to say what they need to say. Sometimes we go a little longer than we need to, but I don't think it hurts to let people have their say. They're elected representatives of the community, and I think that it's an important message that whether you agree with them or not, they should be allowed to articulate their views. I think that's where I would leave it. And I'm all right. I would probably say, I would change adopt to accept on this resolution. That's what I would do. I am not adverse to exploring for us, but we have no, the BLP will have to make its own decisions, and I think they're already moving forward on some of these issues, but I think I would explore, if you guys are interested, for us, mediation with the BLP, because it sounds like they're very interested in that, and maybe we should try it. The person I talked to at the mediation service was very sharp, and they've got, she said they've got a suite of different things they can do to tailor how this might improve our relations with the BLP, because frankly our relations with the BLP are poor, and I think Luann knows it and said so pretty frankly. And that's okay. So I think it kind of turns the tables. Rather than we're telling the BLP what to do, maybe we need to decide for ourselves how we could improve our own relations with the BLP. And I guess I'm open to discussion of that.
If I could, Mayor, I think what we had talked about was because we don't have authority to issue an order to the BLP, was that council could accept the report, recommend to the BLP that it take the recommendations seriously and pursue them, and then you could add the third leg to the stool, is that you are willing to likewise accept the recommendations as to City Council and in good faith pursue them.
Sounds good. I'll go for that.
I think that's reasonable. I think we can. I think it's important to not lose sight of what brought us here. These were serious allegations, and I appreciate the HRC's work in that regard. I do think it's important to put all this out there, since we're having a conversation tonight, that the HRC heard from all the parties, examined everything, and then made some findings. I'm happy to hear tonight that the Board of Light and Power is here taking some of these recommendations to heart. I was a little concerned that the HRC issued the report, and then I'm seeing, big bright orange headlines on their website saying no proof, of discrimination found. And I don't think that's what the HRC said. I think we heard that clear tonight. They didn't say there was no proof. There wasn't enough proof in either direction to say that there was discrimination or there wasn't. No proof does not equal not enough proof. There's a difference between the two. And I think Mr. Crum was a little confused with their attorney's position statement is different than investigation report. I mean, that there was not a discussion with all of the parties involved and hearing from all of the witnesses, and so that's a position statement of the BLP. And frankly, I'm a little concerned that here we are tonight hearing more things about Director Hendrick. They filed an insurance claim to get an attorney. Did they file an insurance claim to indemnify her and give her an attorney to defend the claims that her fellow board members are making against her? I don't know that if that's occurred, I'm not aware of it. But yet, if there's an answer to that, it's up to the mayor.
Yes, Mike, go ahead.
So
You gotta come to the microphone so I can hear you.
the claim was filed with the MPIA for the allegation made by Andrea Hendrick during that publicized meeting.
Ms. Hendrick didn't make this complaint.
Right.
Ms. Pell did.
I have a newspaper article sitting on my desk of her in a public forum, in a public meeting, in the newspaper, making a claim of discrimination. The claim was filed to indemnify the alleged parties, which was not Andrea Hendrick. It was BLP board members that the allegations were made against.
Okay, Mr. Westbrook, you're not answering the question. Was that you're making allegations against your fellow board member very publicly through your attorney on this claim, and I have concern that you haven't, a board that you're a part of, is my understanding, you haven't gone and made a complaint or filed a claim for her to have representation, which I think is concerning. So
we contacted our risk advisor at the MPIA and asked them for guidance on what to do, and we followed their guidance. They assigned Varnum, and we followed their recommendation that was made by our risk advisor.
So
May I just ask a question? So you were not given any attorney advice to file a claim for both the part of the board and on the behalf of Director Hendrick? You were not given that advice by any attorney?
When I saw the article in the paper and I saw the public meeting, I recognized that there was an issue. I contacted our insurance carrier, MPIA, and asked them, directed Renee actually to reach out to them and ask what the correct course of action was, and this was what we were advised to do.
So are you saying, no, you were not advised
Personally,
by
I
any
was not
attorney
advised by an attorney. No, it was after the meeting.
that you should file a claim for both?
No, it was, we were not advised to file a claim for both, no.
But at the time, I think.
What I was told was Andrea was the, there's two parties here. There's the people that are being defended, and then there's
It's okay. I think, you know what? I'm
Ron,
gonna
could you
curtail
respond?
this. I'm gonna curtail this. We're gonna shut this down. Because I think that it's going to get into, I'm gonna shut it down. It's not relevant to this issue, and I think we should address this issue.
Your Honor, I have an overall point that I was trying to wrap up with.
Yes, which is fine. Yes, that's
Was
fine.
that I think
You guys, please take your seats. I think the council needs to figure this part out.
And I am happy to answer
Nope,
the questions if you have them.
I think we're good. Thank you.
I think it shows that there's overall still concerns that I think us as a council, I mean, the Board of Light and Power is still a department of the city. Like, we have many boards and commissions for the city, and I think it's important that we, as a council, make a strong statement that we don't believe that the way Ms. Hendrick was treated is okay. I mean, our own diversity, equity, and inclusion statement states that we believe bringing diverse individuals together and encouraging all voices to be heard allows us to build a stronger community. So I just want to make sure that we're doing more than simply accepting that. I think we still can provide some general direction to the BLP, whether it's a recommendation or however you word it. I think we can say that there's an expectation as the city council that these recommendations be followed. I think they're well thought out. I'm willing to participate in mediation sessions with the Board of Light and Power, They also made some recommendations related to our overall boards and commissions and better orientation sessions and training, and I think all of those are good things. I'm not just picking at the BLP, but I think it's important that we, as a council,
What
take these
about
to
a
heart.
statement that reaffirms our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion? That's probably where I would be most comfortable. I think that this isn't just about gender bias or alleged gender bias. It's also about, there are political differences, there are personality differences, strong personalities. I think that there's blame if you take it on both sides. I don't think either side. There's a maxim in law that's to seek equity, one must do equity, and I really feel like this started off badly. I think that there has been. I actually think the human relations complaint. It was very interesting to me when I saw that. Ashley first brought it to me. I went, that can't be the Human Relations Commission's job, can it? Because that is a job, usually, it's usually in human resources. It's usually an employment job, an employed job, and there are very strict policies. And we pulled the manual and we looked at it, and in fact, it is the Human Relations Council's job. And the Human Relations Commission's job isn't just about gender or age or disability bias. It's also about respect for everyone and civility in interactions with each other. So I think that I understand what you're saying, Ryan. This is what we've got before us. If you want to amend it and you get support from the people to amend it, if you know what you want to say, I'm open to that, but to be honest, I think this matter is best addressed just this way, and we go forward and see what happens. We have very little, the way that the BLP's practices change, if they should change, is through elections. I mean, just like the way our practices change, if they should change, is through elections. That is really the check and balance on what goes on at the BLP, and that it's incumbent on us as an elected board, when we look at another elected board, to understand that and to realize we don't have a lot of leverage, even if we wanted it. But in this situation, this happened in August. There's been substantial improvement in both the meetings and in the interactions and in the agreement to take corrective actions in terms of training and orientation. So, to me, the biggest question is, are we in on this too? And if we are, if you want to approve this resolution, we should. And if there are other things you want to say, you should say them. And if this doesn't cover the matter, from my perspective, this should settle things.
Your Honor, just one last thing. I don't want to make this about us. I think we started to focus on, the implications for us. I wanted to do that as just a show of all of our willingness to improve on what we need to do. I don't want to take away from what the findings of the report regarding Director Hendricks, but I agree with your statements. It looks like there have been some steps forward, so I am comfortable with accepting the report and recommending adoption, recommending to the BLP to adopt, as they seem to have already started to do.
Kevin?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think, I like the word adopt better accept, but that's just me. But I'm not gonna, you know, I think we just put this thing to bed. There's been enough, you know,
Yep.
personal attacks and personal, that, I just assume get this thing over with. But I agree that we could try mediation, but I probably absolutely agree with you on that one, because I just don't see it in a public setting, but that's fine.
Mike?
I'd like to call the question.
Okay.
That's the original motion.
Yeah.
Or
Is that the original
resolution?
motion, or do you want to amend it?
Nope,
The
I'm calling
original
the question.
motion. All right.
Did you want me to reread it all, or you?
Yes, please just
Okay.
reread the original motion.
Consideration by the City Council of a resolution to adopt the report and recommendations made by the Human Relations Commission in regard to a complaint of alleged discrimination. Fritz?
Yes.
Lowe?
Yes.
Cummins?
Yes.
McLaughlin?
Yes.
McNally?
Yes. Okay, moving on. New business. Item C.
Consideration by the City Council of a resolution to approve the Grand Haven Jeep Fest on Saturday, May 20th, 2023, from 7 a.m. until 4 p.m. in downtown Grand Haven, and allow food trucks and amplified sound from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. Administration recommends approval. Main Street DDA recommends approval.
So move.
And second it.
Discussion?
This is basically the same thing we had last year, if I
Yes.
remember correctly.
Pretty much.
No deviations.
Well, I think I can speak to some of it. The deviation is it's the Rotary Club, rather than Kenzie's Bee Cafe being the recipient this year of the.
It's still a Jeep Fest, just a different recipient.
It's a Jeep Fest with the Rotary Club will, I think Ferry School, I heard, is part of the.
Yeah. They are the recipient,
The
ultimately.
Ferry School's got a project that's the ultimate recipient. The biggest issue, frankly, is the organizers here. I know Jason said he's in the way back corner. I don't think we need you yet, but the biggest issue, frankly, and to me it continues to be an issue, is Saturday vice Sunday festival. And there are a significant number of merchants who, it was initially posed for Saturday of Memorial Day weekend. And Jeremy looked at that and asked around, and I think the general consensus was, no, please, not on Saturday of Memorial Day weekend.
Oh,
so
no.
they backed it out 1 week. But the week is still, those weekends in, those Saturdays in May, when they're sunny, bring shoppers out, and there is concern among a number of downtown merchants that car shows have traditionally gone on Sundays because it's much less interference with, it brings more people into town on a day that's less crowded. So we talked at the DDA meeting about whether this could be done on a Sunday instead, or an earlier Saturday in the season, and turns out there's a blessing of the Jeeps. There's a Mackinac Island or Mackinac City Jeep. There's a full calendar of Jeep festivals, and at least this promoter, who is a local guy, said he can't do it on a Sunday. So I actually voted to support this at the DDA with grave reservations. And I guess what I would say to you guys is Sunday is better for these things. And so for this year, I'm going to support it because I voted to support it, but in the future, I really think Sunday is the right answer, or not in May through September. We haven't closed down the Main Street these days for anything but art fair. And Mike, you probably have some different views on that, but.
Oh, no, I don't have any different views on it. Sunday's always been a good day for any kind of car shows. I mean, if you go down,
downtown on
it brings the livelihood down to our downtown on a Sunday, which you normally go down there, since I live in that area. On Sundays, it's a little bit more sparse than it is on a Saturday. Saturday, you get a lot of people coming in from out of town, and it really does. And to block up the street is bad enough. If we'll be voting on blocking off the street down there, we're going to block off another street for all three streets and not have any people coming down to shopping, because they won't come in if you got that street blocked off. Sunday's a much better day. I hate to tell them this, but Saturdays are not a good day for a car show unless you're gonna do it on a private piece of property. Most car shows I go to on a Saturday are like not in the middle of a town. They're usually at an organization someplace that has it.
An outlying lot somewhere.
Absolutely, and they're promoted heavily out that way for that, for simple fact is, but they have it right. Our town is small, and you fill it up with something already, you're not gonna get enough for people to be there, then, yeah, it's Sunday's when you wanna draw the more people. We have enough draw. What else do we have happening on that day? Is there anything else happening in this town? Because we usually have a
Kite Fest.
Kite Fest, oh my
That's
gosh.
the rest of it. Kite Fest
Kite
brings
Fest,
in a ton of people.
and is there anything
mostly
else with that?
focused- I think that's,
I believe it's just Kite Fest. Yeah.
But we seem to pack everything up sometimes on some days, but Saturday is really a tough day for a car show of some sort, downtown. If it was off the side in the side streets or into parking lots or whatever else, which it couldn't happen on a Saturday either because they're full. I have to agree. Saturday.
You know, I listened to the DDA meeting, and I thought Jason did a very, very good job of explaining why he has to do it on Saturday and not Sunday. And,
well,
you know,
my understanding was he's not available to do it on Sunday.
well, but there's also, you know, other circumstances where some of the people that would typically come in for this Jeep Fest, which we had a great turnout last year, wouldn't come in on a Sunday, but will come in on a Saturday because they want to get back to their homes. Am I correct?
You gotta come to the microphone.
I mean, I'm just,
Probably 80 to 90% of our attendees are not local residents,
right.
but they came to this event to support something that only benefits this community. And many of those people came, some as far away from Tennessee, New York, Indiana, and they came, they'd never been to Grand Haven, and they wanted to stay the weekend. So if the event was on a Sunday, they would come and then not be able to, they'd have to take an extra day off work, or some of our vendors are out of state, same, they have to travel here, come on a Saturday, go home on a Sunday. And I can't speak to every single merchant, but the ones that I did said they had their biggest days in over a decade in May because of that event, because our event drove people to go in. They had to go in and say they were from the Jeep event to get a discount or to get some kind of something. And they were grateful for that because they wouldn't have had that in another typical pre-Memorial Day weekend.
Didn't you say in your presentation that there was only 6 local Jeeps?
Yes.
How many Jeeps were there?
We only allowed 250 to register, but we had significantly more of that parked in the, and then we had, so if you do the math and say if 2 to 4 people are in each car, and so it was thousands of, over 1,000 people.
Okay.
So.
Any other questions for Jason?
No.
Okay.
I'm just glad that it wasn't because there's other events around, because a good example is our art that we have downtown.
Art fair.
Yep.
Yep.
Muskegon went ahead and did their art fair the same day as ours now, and they didn't think twice about it. So I'm just glad it wasn't the simple fact it is, because I know some of the vendors, they have a choice to either come to Grand Haven or go to Muskegon, and they've been very loyal to
I
it.
heard at the DDA meeting the other day that this is the last year Muskegon will do it on the same weekend as ours. That
Okay.
Next year they've changed it. I'm not sure how that works.
I'm just
but
glad it wasn't.
I think
because
they're working.
Nobody's
those-
coming here and telling me differently
working those
there than telling me that what I heard was because they're gonna be here, they're gonna be there, they're not gonna be here, and I'm going, it's not a problem. It's really tough to have to block off the street on a Saturday, though. It really is for me.
Okay.
Sunday
Anybody else?
Sunday is
is a better choice.
Yeah, it definitely will get better
Maria?
business.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Fritz,
No.
Lowe,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
McNally.
No.
This motion passes. Item D, consideration by the City Council of a resolution to approve the closure of Washington Avenue from Harbor Drive to First Street for outdoor dining and social district enhancement, provided fire lanes are recognized and adjustments are made for special events as directed by the Department of Public Safety, and permit parking lane closures only for outdoor dining on side streets in Centertown and other locations as approved by the Directors of Public Works, Public Safety, and the City Manager. Main Street recommends approval. Administration recommends approval.
So
Okay,
moved.
is there a motion? Yep. Motion by McLaughlin, second by Cummins. Discussion?
Is Jeremy here? Were you going to make a presentation, or is you just going to let us wing this?
Jeremy Swiftney, DDA. There is no presentation, since we already went over one in November. There's some finer details that I can kind of go over. About a week and a half ago or so, Ashley, the mayor, and I went and talked to a number of the downtown businesses. She may have an exact number. I would say far and away a majority of them were reached. There was less opposition than we expected. A number of people changed kind of their tune about what their thoughts would be, but we did go down and discuss what we were talking about and listen to some of their concerns. What the DDA did is, in cleaning up some of the things, we focused on the cleanliness. I don't know if Ashley has all of the details on the slide, but we focused on the cleanliness aspect. We want to make sure that power washing happens on a weekly basis. We want to make sure that the businesses that are in that area understand that they're part of the cleanliness need that we have. They're part of the solution of making sure that that space is clean, meticulous, vibrant. We wanted to add signage, which is going to be paid for through the DDA and through the partners in that first block area. We discussed, could you raise sticker prices for the social district cups, but that could unfairly have somebody who is in the social district but not in that first block maybe paying for some of those costs. So we're going to be reaching out to each of the businesses to make sure that we fund different signage for access into the community. So as you come down Harbor in either direction, how do you get into the downtown to find parking, to find the retail stores? So we're going to be focused on those words like downtown parking, downtown retail shopping. Everyone sees the restaurants as you pull in, so I think having signage for that may be unnecessary, but needing to know like the retailers are open both in that first block and in second and third block, directing people. As I think Mary said earlier, visitors who are here and may not know where to go, how do they get into our downtown? Having better direction for that through signage from Public Works and signage in the form of A-frame signs that are large and easily readable as you drive by. So those are some things that we discussed. She's got a couple maps up here. With signed agreements, I would feel comfortable allowing a business to expand in front of another business. But I don't feel comfortable, I'm going to call out Kirby, for instance, allowing Kirby to expand in front of Harborview unless Harborview is on board with that. I don't feel comfortable with that space being allowed. And I talked to Ashley about that when we've come to a conclusion that we need to have a meeting in advance of any conversation about who gets what space with every stakeholder in that first block. What do they feel comfortable with? What do they not? How do they feel about what space would be appropriate, what would not? We have a number of businesses that weren't open in 2022 that will be open in 2023 with the old Kozak's building, with Cafe Tamaki. So we have businesses that are going to be in the area operating that weren't in 2022. We want to hear what they say as well. So having that mandatory meeting, make sure that everybody has their voice heard in that block. And that's something that Ashley and I have talked about and feel very strongly that is important to listen to those before we even get into a conversation about who could have what space. It needed to be a conversation about what is everybody comfortable with in that space, what works best, what doesn't work best. Could we have, for instance, like a surf shop, instead of having their little space blocked out, could they work with Long Road and have displays throughout Long Road space? Could Marriott Calico Cat have some items out in like an open seating space? Can we talk about advertising? So there's some ideas that we're going to bounce around and see where everybody's comfortable
with their business, because at the end of the day, we have to make sure, that's the same reason we don't ask our retailers and our restaurants to be open specific hours or days, is everybody has to staff their business, everybody has to run their business how they see fit. We're trying to create an outdoor gathering space that attracts people into our district. Between the holidays, I got some information about how many visitors come down. You know, we had an increase year over year from 21 to 22 of 19.2% of visitors from the first block intersection at First and Washington plus 500 feet. That tells me that we were actually doing something good. We brought more visitors into our community than were there in 2021. That's the goal of this, is to bring more people into our downtown.
Could it also tell you COVID relaxed a little bit and vaccinations were more widespread?
That could be the case, but we had the same events going on in 21 that we did in 22 as well. You know, Coast Guard Fest, I don't know if they have exact numbers, but still a 19% increase is a huge number to increase a year over a year cost. And we're basing information on the information we have. We're saying, yes, there are more people coming into our town. We're trying to attract those people into our specific district, into our downtown shopping center, so that they can go and enjoy a dinner. They can go and enjoy retail shopping.
You got anything for Jeremy?
Yeah, can I ask, I hear what you're saying as far as, like, you know, the city's not going to say, hey, you must have, you know, you're leery of saying you must have these hours or that sort of thing. But what I mean, I think some of the points related to some of the dead times are well taken, right? So, you know, what can we do to work with businesses to, you know, even if they're maybe not completely staffing the inside of their restaurants, but they're maybe encouraging folks to use that area outside so it does look, you know, more vibrant on a more, you know, more regular basis.
And that's one of the conversations we'll have with that first block, is ways that the retailers can join in with the restaurants and with the open gathering space to have events going on. We're going to have some live music for times in that district, continued busking. Guitar Haven's helping us set up some musicians that could possibly be coming in. But we're open to ideas that will help attract and eliminate those dead zones. If I could go out there and pick up the barricades and have it open for part of the day, closed for part of the day, I absolutely would. And that might be something in the future that we can continue to work towards as technologies change and the way of the world changes. Maybe those things are more readily available where we can have it be at certain days. But right now the feasibility of that just isn't there. And we're trying to grab onto something that people, our visitors, our community are saying they like. You know, Tribune ran a survey, over 900 people took it, over 65%, I think it was about 68 or 69%, said that they were in support of the closure. So we're trying to listen to not only the stakeholders, but the visitors and the people who are coming and spending their money in our town as well, and trying to understand that that's going to have the biggest economic impact for our retailers, for our restaurants, and for our stakeholders.
I know from my perspective, I think it's a great idea. I thought it was, you know, I went down there a lot last year, where I probably wouldn't have, because I probably would head to the east side, the east end. But I think it's a great idea. I think there's certain things that we should consider. I think somebody brought it up at one of the meetings that, you know, Franklin should be two-way. I don't know why we can't make that two-way, and make it much easier to get in those parking lots with the closure of that street. I don't know why. It's probably, and I don't want to hear the same thing that, you know, we've always done it that way. But you know,
I don't control the roads, so that's on you guys.
I'm just talking. You know, and you know, I'd given Ashley some ideas for different barricades. Boy, if we could put some different barricades up than those ugly concrete barriers, that would be really cool. I mean, I saw some that actually had advertising on it. And I don't know why we couldn't look into something besides that. If we're going to close the street, what's the difference? Do you really need concrete barriers to separate the spaces? I think so, you know, and I think the DDA and yourself, you know, have done a wonderful job trying to. You're not going to please everybody. We know that, but I think you've done a good job to reach out to people and really get the feeling of what the merchants are. So I'm going to support this resolution.
Karen, you got anything?
No, I think in terms of what, I agree with many of the points Councilor McLaughlin made. I really appreciate the Main Street DDA, all the work that you have done to try to reach out Jeremy, into the community and try to find some ways. And based on your presentation, you're still continuing to look for ways to get people to find some win-wins. And so I really appreciate that. And I believe when Joyce was here presenting, you outlined, was that last month? You outlined a number of things about looking at ways we could incrementally make that not just a lot more clean, but more attractive.
Mm-hmm.
On the parking front, I do, if something that was brought up by Mary on the parking spaces, and I think it was brought up by someone at that meeting about coming down Jackson, visitors have, the problem with it being blocked. And then, as Councilor McLaughlin said, the next block, Franklin, being a one-way street, makes it very confusing.
Yes.
And even those of us that are residents coming down, it's just like, whoops, I missed it, and but we know how to work it around. I think one of the issues, though, that I think we've all experienced is if you can't try to park really near on Franklin, and if there's no parking there, you got to do some kind of loop to get back up to the other, and we have the vast majority of our parking off of Franklin. So while I know everybody doesn't like change, so I'm just suggesting that on that parking front, if we were willing to look at Franklin in a different way, that might address that the parking issue that's been mentioned by people. But I do think this is something that it brought vibrancy to the first block of Washington, and you're not going to get it perfect right away. This is going to be sort of incremental, but I like that you are all working together and trying to find some, areas of agreement and where people can cross-promote. So well done on that.
Ryan, you got anything else? I'm going to say I agree with you about the dead zone. I'll let you, I have some things I'd like to say. I suspect I'll be in the minority in the end, but I think there are some real problems with this, and Jeremy and I have discussed them, and I've discussed them at the DDA, but we maroon Mary's Business and Harborview Care, or Harborview Eye Care, between two banks of empty seats that we don't require them to remain open for any particular service hours, so that the Anna's House seating closes at 2 o'clock every afternoon. So half of Mary's Business Day and one side of of Washington is empty, and several of the bars don't open Mondays and Tuesdays at all, and don't open till 4 o'clock on several of the other days. So the early part of the day, one side's empty, and the later part of the day, the other side's empty, and some days both are empty. And so my brother was visiting the other day, and he said, "What's going on in the city?" And I looked at him, I said, "We're trying to figure out street closures on Washington." And he started telling me a story about, oh yeah, they just come from Ann Arbor where his daughter's in school, and there's a commercial district there where, he goes, it's really interesting. We happen to be there at 5 o'clock. They put barricades at the end of the block, and they roll tables out. And I'm like, who rolls the tables out? And he goes, everybody rolls tables out. So there are other ways to do this, and there are other ways to design it. And I'm not going to say it isn't getting incrementally better, but in the meantime, we're really seriously disadvantaging some of the people downtown. So we passed I didn't, but the Beyond the Pier Master Plan, one of its principal goals was, it said, enhance physical and visual connections between downtown and the waterfront. And basically, the aesthetics of what we're putting up, it breaks the physical connection between downtown and the waterfront, just breaks it up. and the aesthetics of it, to me, have not been good. Used to be able to sit down at a sidewalk cafe downtown, and when a steamer went by or a ship went by, you saw it. When a big sailboat went by, you watched the aluminum mast, and all of that's getting blocked from most of the Main Street by the stuff that we're putting in there. There's a guy in town named Jan Goins, and he is an incredible landscape designer, and he knows his way around a pub, and he loves our downtown, okay? And somebody like Jan could, it doesn't have to be Jan, but a designer that understood what was good could come down and figure out what appeals to people visually, how traffic should flow, foot traffic, so that the stores that are being disadvantaged by the blocking collections of empty chairs and tables, so that things flow. I mean, I look at that space and I think, why are we giving sidewalk cafe space up at the same time that we're giving restaurants our streets? If we're going to give them the streets, why not keep that sidewalk open so that people can walk and do walk down both to Mary's and our riverfront? So there are all kinds of things, I believe, we're not doing that. I would vote against it generally, but if we do it, I think we need to do it a lot better. And to be honest, I don't think we've put the work in that needs to be done. So that's, I look at each of these issues. I got layout, I think, is a problem. Physical barriers to the riverfront for downtown, I think, is a problem. Disadvantage to the merchants, I think, is a problem. I look at the others, the proposed dates of closures. School doesn't close down until the middle of June, but we want to open this before Memorial Day weekend. And frankly, most of there's a lot of chilly weather in late May and early June, and I know these restaurants aren't going to staff those restaurants, the street restaurants, during the chilly weather. So why not wait till later in June, July, and August? I mean, why not carve the time period down so at least the people who are disadvantaged by it are disadvantaged less? The type of closure I have problems with, that it's 24/7. Unless you want to require, and I think Brian brought this up, but it seems to me, as a matter of fairness, if you want to give up our street, we ought to be able to require of the people who use the street that they staff it the core hours of the downtown, which I would say are between 11 and 7. And I've heard you say, no, we can't do that. We can do that. We can say, if you want to use the street, you need to staff your restaurants those hours. We don't generally have that power for somebody who's in his own business, even though it would be nice if we did, because honestly, downtown's hours are shrinking and shrinking. But if somebody wants open space on our street for the summer, and we're going to say it's going to be blocked off for 24 hours all week long, I think it's not unreasonable to say you need to staff it. What's interesting to me is I feel like we've had very little input from the restaurants, all right? Because they're getting what they want and we're not demanding much of them. And I don't mean that personally, John. I just think that you're going to get what you want, and it's going to leave behind some of your neighbors, and there's not a lot that I see that you guys are putting into this equation to balance it out for everybody. And one of the things you could do is staff it more. One of the things you could do is direct people to your neighbors' stores. I mean, there are things that I would hope the restaurants would do, but I don't feel like the restaurants are coming to the table. So I like the idea very much that, and I talked about some kind of meeting where the restaurants have to come to the table if they want space. And once they're there, I think we really ought to be looking at how can we make it better for everybody. If we're going to do it, make it better for everybody. That's where I am. Oh, I want to say one more thing, and that's on beverage carts, all right? I had a DDA meeting a couple of months ago. I looked around the room and I said, can anyone tell me where those beverage carts came from? And they all kind of hung their heads because I don't know whether there was any consultation with beverage carts, but it didn't seem like Jeremy knew they were coming in. They set up they laid out the whole design of the seating areas, and then the beverage carts showed up, and they were infringing, and their neighbors, for the second summer in a row, they're trying to put things in front of their neighbors' storefronts. So I think we should be deciding whether beverage carts are a good idea and whether we're going to end up with a beer tent environment down there if we're not careful. I don't have, what I said at the DDA meeting is I lived in New Orleans for 3 years and I loved walking Bourbon Street with a daiquiri, but you couldn't buy a daiquiri on the street. You had to go into a bar or an establishment to buy a drink. So the idea that we've got these beverage carts that people can walk up to, and it will lead, if we don't have better policing, it will lead to over-serving, and we're going to have some issues. And I don't know that I necessarily think, as Doug does, that it's a liability issue, though I suppose it could be. But it's a moral issue. It's a governance issue. So that's what I think. So if it were me, and I were saying what we should do, I would say we should postpone this vote until we have a plan. Last year, when we considered this, we said we want to see the schematic before we implement, and we did not get a schematic, and it implemented haphazardly. This year, I think we should say, get Jeremy and Ashley and the bar owners and the directly affected merchants particularly in the same room, and I would say find somebody with some design experience that can look at the space we have and make it better, and then come back to us with a real plan, because we're now in January and we're not implementing till June, or maybe late May, and
we got time.
There's time.
I have to agree. I think I mentioned this before, and I'm glad you put it in there. You have to respect the other businesses down there because their storefronts are their billboards. And I stood up when it came for the cafes down there. I thought that was a great idea, and it worked out fine. Then a pandemic came, and we ended up moving out into the street. And then all of a sudden, they took away everything for the other storefronts down there. I think the mayor has a good idea to sit down and talk with everybody on that first street there. It's going to affect them 100%. Let them sit down and figure out how to make it work for each and every one of them. If we have to take away the cafes on the sidewalks to get more sidewalk space for people to walk on, that's fine, if we're going to give them to the street. But there's also, when you come out into the street, you're right with the beverage carts. We don't allow food trucks to park down there unless they come to us and ask us. Nobody came to us and asked us if they could have beverage carts down there. I find that very, very difficult. And my governing here is that we have to allow things on the street, but we have to say yes or no to it, and we've always done that. And it never came to us. So we have plenty of time to work this out. I'm willing to table this and let them work it out myself, and try and come back with something and give us a better design, because you're right, you go down there at night, when the bars and the restaurants are open, it's packed, but you go down there any other time, it's empty. I live down there, I walk down there, I see it all the time, it's not 100% full. We need to get it full all the time. I find it very difficult with this, the way the design is set up right now. If you change the design, liven it up, you don't see the waterfront. If you're coming down and you stop at the copper post and look down that street, when it's all the carts and everything down there, you can't even see our waterfront. And that's supposed to be our showcase. The waterfront is our showcase down there to draw people here. And we can't see it, they don't go there. So I like to make the motion to table this and have them work that out, as the mayor said.
And I would support that motion.
All right, so we have a motion to postpone to a future date.
Yes.
I'd say look at it in 2 months, and in that 2 months,
Give them time to work it
give
out.
them time to all sit down together and,
make this thing work. I want to make it work for everybody.
well, I get that it won't work equally for everybody, but I think that we should be making accommodation to the people who are disadvantaged to the maximum extent possible. And I don't feel like there's been any accommodation whatsoever by the groups that are gaining significant advantage from this plan. And I think there should be. I mean, I'll give you an example. You're an owner and you own 2 parking spaces behind your store, and you've just blocked a main street where people can't get in, and your immediate neighbor is having trouble getting elderly customers into their store. You've got a couple parking spaces. Post them so that they're for your neighbor. I mean, there are things you can do to accommodate your neighbors, and this is supposed to be a community endeavor, and I feel like that's not been the case. So I get that it's popular. That kind of surprised me, actually, but I also get, Jeremy's right, after asking 3 times at public meetings how many of the 42 merchants he'd gone to talk to, Ashley and I invited him to go with us, and we all 3 walked, and I would say what I learned was changed my position somewhat, because what I learned was many opposed it kind of, there were a variety of different reasons, but the most thoughtful people opposed it because particularly Mary Janice's shop was so disadvantaged, and she had been and continues to operate a beautiful business in this town. But there also were people who said the aesthetics of our Main Street are destroyed.
Make it look better.
I would say there were also people who said, my employees have nowhere to park. And I kind of went, all right, maybe that's not our strongest argument. People signed the petition for a variety of reasons, all right? And we talked to as many of them as we could reach in about 6 hours. And actually, I learned a lot, and I met a lot of people, but we need to go out and talk to the people who are affected and recognize that if we want to do this, we should try to make it a community effort that includes everybody and includes the neighbors that are disadvantaged.
All right, I have a motion to postpone. You said 2 months. Did you want to do to a specific date in March or just
What's our second meeting in March?
the 20th?
Yes, to the 20th of March. It's your motion, Mike?
That's 20th is great. I just like to work this out between everybody.
Okay. Did you want to discuss further on it, or are you ready to?
There should really not be discussion about a motion to table.
Okay. So the motion's been made and seconded. Call it.
Fritz?
Yes.
Lowe?
No.
Cummins?
No.
McLaughlin?
No.
McNally?
Yes.
This motion fails.
Okay, then let's, is there any further discussion for
I haven't said hardly anything, so I just want to,
Yep.
some fair points have been made and fair observations have been made. I think Jeremy and our staff are going back to a lot of folks that had some concerns and talking some more, and I think we've seen improvement with business owners that had concerns that they're more supportive. We've certainly seen multiple surveys where there's support. We certainly have data to show that there's an increase in traffic down there, maybe partially because of this. And I've said it before, we need to be innovative and adapt and stay relevant as with unique ideas to attract visitors. I don't see it as a hindrance to our waterfront. Driving a car down Washington, I don't see how that enhances our community that much more, or in a greater sense than this dining option does. I think to be on, we have a two-way Columbus. I think to be on the pier plan that you mentioned, did mention a two-way Franklin. I think that could help with some traffic flow things, so I think that is worthy to at least take a look at what our options would be. I know there would probably be some costs there, and that would probably be another big change, but I think that's something that is worth looking at. I think concerns related to like the layout and being, seeing things that maybe were unexpected, I think there's some give and take on that. I think I'd be willing to, approve this tonight, but instead of, saying, these final plans are approved by, Director of Public Works, Public Safety, and the city manager, but that the final plans and layout be approved by the city council. So that way, if there's any, you bring the final site plan layouts after you have those discussions with all of the stakeholders and the layout and what everything's going to look like, and address those concerns. You should have more answers at that point as far as who's going to be operating when, and working through some of those concerns and entertainment. And then city council gets an opportunity to have a final look at the final site plans and layouts and offer suggestions, and we give a final blessing. So, well, it could be March, April, when
Yeah, so it sounds like, and I'm going to paraphrase or put words in your mouth, but you would say that you would like an extra step. So in what we proposed, it was that me and Ashley and Public Works, Public Safety were all involved in the placement. But now, past that, we want to bring it here. So I would say, I don't know if there needs to be a specific time right now, or if it just has to be done and approved prior to the street being closed.
And I'd like to say we need a month before the street's closed, because
then,
the last time, that's how we left it, and we never saw it. So I'd say,
so that'd be,
I'd say we're
end of April.
Than the 1st of April.
I mean, I think I have no problem saying we're approving the closure of everything tonight for outdoor dining and social district enhancement, with the condition that the final site layout be brought to city council for final approval. So we're approving the actual closure, saying, hey, we're planning on this happening this summer, but we want to see the final site layout to make sure that there's no surprises, that everybody understands what it's going to look like, and everybody sees the final plan before it's actually put into place.
And we're not going to require business hours by any of the restaurateurs.
I think I'm willing to see what that discussion looks like once they kind of get everybody together to see, what that would
Then why
look
not,
like.
Ryan? If those are the discussions that are going to take place, why not
put it in there?
Postpone it until, and bring them back?
No, because
in a
I think
couple of
I'm
months?
okay saying that I think the street should be closed this summer. I'm willing to support that, but I think it's fair to say that we want to see the final site plan.
I'm
but is
supportive of closing the streets as long as it's done with in conjunction of other businesses down there and a long way to work it out together. It's not that you think I'm always about having cars going through there. No, it's not necessarily. We got to have a better clear sight line down through there, as I said. We also have to make sure that sidewalks are open, people can walk, and the businesses that are down there actually get exposure, not having stuff in front of them so they can't see them from the other side of the street or as they're walking down there. That's why I wanted to postpone it, so all of them can work together. That's what we're trying with us with the BLP. We need to work together. It's the same thing with them down there. They, on the same block, they all have to work together. It's like a family knit thing. I don't know if you know how businesses work. They all work together down there. That's what they do. And that's what you should be doing to make it work together. But if you're just going to slam the door on certain individuals, go ahead. I'm not going to do that. I want to make sure that they all are on the same page and all working together. And there's give and take. Just like here, we have our give and take. I don't always get my way. And I don't expect to, but at the end of the day, I accept it and I move on, and it's what it's going to be, and I keep working forward. But I think they should be able to have a little more contact between each other down there, Ryan. I think they need to do that. They need to discuss it, how they can figure it out, the way they can help each other down there, because each business thrives off every other business down there, and that's the whole district, not just the first block. The first block will influence everything coming up from the river. People come to town, they walk the boardwalk, and they look down, they see this, they don't know what's going here, they don't come. You've got to make sure it's more attractive for them when they come down to town. They stay at the beach, they walk down the boardwalk, they come into town. We need to have these guys all working together, and that's what I want to do. That's why I wanted to postpone it. I'm not against blocking the street off completely.
Right, so we approve that tonight and tell them that we're good with that. We're good with it being closed, but you bring back to us a final site plan that, I mean, they've heard, Jeremy and our staff have heard the feedback that
Put the
we've given.
details in it now, because once we sign the dotted line here, we're done.
Right, the site plan is not the only thing we've discussed. Now, the feedback, Jeremy's heard and Ashley's heard, but there are the site plan, the operating hours, the beverage carts. I had some others which were coordination of music. There were multiple times downtown where there's concerts on the riverfront and there's music playing downtown, and the kind of our battle of the bands. I mean, there's a lot going on down there that's
Right. I don't feel like I need to micromanage every detail. I don't think that we need to do
and
all of that. So
Your Honor?
I'm not talking about micromanaging every detail.
Okay.
Your Honor?
Those are just basic things that we need, and we're closing those streets.
And yes, Karen.
I would just like to say, that's what I read you are going to do, Jeremy. We will approve it. The motion to postpone has been turned down, but you have here, upon council approval, a mandatory first block meeting to be held with all of these interested parties to discuss, review the spaces, the aesthetics, the beverage carts. To me, you are, and you've talked about addressing those things. So I have the trust that the right people are involved, and I believe that mandatory block party, I understand that parties have refused to meet with one another, and I think this will force people to either come to the table or not, and we need you to work together, and so I think you have the right construct, and I'm comfortable with you and the DDA, moving forward with that. Thank you.
Anything further?
Yeah, if it's not in black and white.
Well, I've offered a compromise to be halfway on this. That way you at least still get to review some of these site plan details and then
Add it to the motion.
What's the compromise? I don't understand it, Ryan.
Yeah, what's the compromise?
You have a lot of concerns related to the site layout and site plan, and that you...
And the operating plan, not just the site plan, the operating plan.
Okay, and I think that those details are still in the works and being worked out. And so essentially, I'm offering a compromise to say you're approving the use and saying the use of Washington Avenue on the first block for this summer for outdoor dining and social district enhancement. Yes, we're willing to approve that, but we want to see the final details based on the discussion that we've had here tonight.
But I'd like to see it, but I don't know if we actually have to approve it. I'd like to see it, but I don't know, I don't want to.
And drink cards.
I just don't want to see another vote. I mean, we're just going to get into it again, and I like to see the plan. I absolutely want to see a plan before, but I want to see what happens to the meeting. I want that feedback.
We should have had it here at this meeting.
All right. Apparently, we're not making any progress.
No.
We've got a motion on the floor.
For a vote?
Yeah, will you please?
Would you like me to reread it first, or?
Well, I actually don't know what the $1 per square foot per month is. Is that?
That's the next one.
That's the next one.
Okay, all right.
We're not on that one.
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead and read it.
Consideration by the City Council of a resolution to approve the closure of Washington Avenue from Harbor Drive to First Street for outdoor dining and social district enhancement, provided fire lanes are recognized and adjustments are made for special events as directed by the Department of Public Safety, and permit parking lane closures only for outdoor dining on side streets in Centertown and other locations as approved by the Director of Public Works, Public Safety, and the City Manager. All right. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Cummins?
Yes.
Fritz?
No.
Lowe?
Yes.
McNally?
No.
This motion passes.
Thank you all.
Can you move on to E, please?
New business E, consideration by the City Council of a resolution to amend the fee for use of public space for outdoor dining to $1 per square foot per month for the 2023 season, and to amend the barricade placement fee to $45 per additional barricade. Administration recommends approval.
Can I get a
per-
motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second?
Okay. Can you explain, Ashley, what has been the practice and what we're changing?
Sure. So as this has evolved over time since we've implemented our outdoor dining options, as of most recently this last year, our model for assessing the businesses for the use of the space out front has been a per square foot per month fee, of which we've gone down and measured actual use of space to acquire the information about square footage. So 50 cents has been our standard. Looking at costs and some comparables in different municipalities, there seems to be, it's a little difficult to compare apples to apples as far as how everybody is approaching their outdoor dining, but relatively it seems to be that $200 to $300 per parking space, equivalent to our square footage, is more of a standard or average. So this proposal will be double, that is bumping it from 50 cents per square foot to $1. And additionally, we have charged per barricade to recover the costs of the initial purchase. So rather than I think the very first barricade is that $400, and each additional barricade has been $35, proposing bumping that up $10. Overall, it'd be about a $10,000 increase in revenue. That is double, but could assist with some of our enforcement issues, some of the aesthetics, general operations downtown.
Does the amount we're charging represent fair market value? Is there a way, I mean, do we have any benchmarks?
As far as fair market value, haven't necessarily run that exact comparison, just again use comparables to outdoor dining across the state and the country more so.
So you benchmarked it?
Yeah.
Yep, I'm sorry, I missed that part. Okay.
Now, this is covering all the way out to the middle of the street where they use, right? Not just the parking spots, because they're out past the parking spots.
Nope. A lot of municipalities charge per parking space, which to try to equate that to a similar comparable, we are charging for square footage overall, not per parking space.
Yeah, I know, 'cause
so
you
we
said
do measure the entirety of the barricaded space.
Yeah, you said $200 per parking space, and you figured that out in that route. But now you're figuring the square footage. I think we should get a little bit more and use some of that extra money we make on that to go toward helping the rest of the merchants downtown, earmark that for our snow melt, if we could do that. I'd rather raise it up to $1.50 or even $2 a square foot and help the rest of the merchants on the line down there, because snow melt is an expense they need to do, and if we're going to have a majority of them not benefiting from what's happening down the other end, make sure that it passes on down the line, help out some of our merchants.
Okay, do you want to make,
Can
make
I-
a motion to amend this?
I'm just trying to understand because I'm not sure, the two of you said the same thing. You said you don't charge just for a single parking space. You're doing it on a square footage of the entire, so as they go into the street, we're charging for that, correct?
Correct.
It's just,
So
and the
they're already
benchmarking
charging
right
square
now is many municipalities average between 200 and 300 per space per month. You've recommended raising this to, doubling this so that the dollar per square foot would essentially be the 200. So we're already in that range of what limited benchmarking you were able to get out there, correct?
Yeah, currently ours would translate using roughly 200 square feet as the approximate average for a parking space. Ours, we would be about $100 per space per month. So bumping it up to $1 per square foot would put us more within that average at $200 per space per month.
I'm not comfortable allocating money from
parking space,
this.
right?
I'm not comfortable allocating money from this to specific uses at this point in time. I think that's a wonderful suggestion for consideration, but I'm not comfortable in mandating that as a part of passing this. But it's
Yes,
just
and
me.
that's all.
Okay.
Just to clarify, this chart's just an example, right? I mean, this is only showing, July, August, and September, when we're not going all the way through September, we're starting in mid-May. We'll be starting in mid-May, then there's
Correct.
June.
Yeah, this is a sample of what our billing would look like.
Right. And obviously, actual space is still being determined for many of these.
Just to show the impact. But again, double is relatively standard to try to gauge.
Well, I think that the space is quite valuable. I think it's good to see the increase. You said it's about $200 to $300 per parking space. And if you're taking averaging that on a 200 square foot parking space, and that's how you're getting to your dollars. So basically, you would be putting us at kind of the lower end of the average. You know,
We're actually getting more money because she's including all the spaces they're renting, right?
which we did last year too.
Yeah.
They're using.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
This would
Yeah, this isn't
essentially.
just the parking space. It's the whole space. I understand that. I understand how they got the calculation. So if we
So the
base it on
question is,
250,
is there room to move it up? I think that's
that
the
puts us at $1.25 a square foot and puts us right in the middle. And I think
Yeah.
Grand Haven and the visitors that we have and what we attract, I think that's.
So you're moving to amend the motion to $1.25 rather than $1 per square foot? Is that accurate?
Yes, I would make that motion to amend
All right,
to
is there a
$1.25
second?
per square
Is there
foot.
a second to
I'll second
amend?
that.
Okay. Is there further discussion? Call the question.
Cummins,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
McLaughlin, Fritz,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. Okay, so we're past the amending. Now, will you call the amended motion?
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. Okay. We've got, the last item is
New business
New
F.
business F, and I called that one. And I did it because Ron's here, and he's not always here. And I've been talking to Ashley for some time, and to Derek, and actually to Eric Law, about my qualms about.
I'll make a motion so we can discuss this.
Thanks, Mike.
Do you
I'll
want me-
second that motion.
Did you want me to read it again?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Approve the professional service agreement with Aben Marsh to prepare a drinking water asset management plan and assist with undertaking the city's distribution system material investigation in the not-to-exceed amount of $308,915, and authorize the Director of Public Works to execute the necessary documents.
So moved.
There's a motion by Fritz and a second by Lowe.
There you go. Now you-
Thank you. Now I'll tell you why I did it.
Not a problem, Mayor, you're all right.
I've been reading the fine print of these contracts, which is not easy to do because it's really fine print. And I am very concerned that, when I first saw this, this item on the agenda, I went, it's a $300,000 contract that we're sole sourcing, which kind of, in the government contracting world, raises the hair on the back of my neck. But we have a great relationship with Aben Marsh, and they do great work for us, and we value their services. But some time ago, I pointed out to Ashley and to Derek that we used their contract form, and their contract form is grossly unfair to us and puts us at substantial risk. And the first time I pointed it out, Ashley and Derek went back to them, and initially they said, Derek said, well, they said they never, that there's a limitation of liability provision in there that's horrendous toward the city, all right, or toward anybody who's their client. And, oh, don't worry, we never enforce that. And I'm like, well, then take it out of the contract, because if we contract that way and something bad happens, we're potentially at risk. I just pulled I asked Ashley, and she did, talk to Ron, and Ron said, yes, we should not be signing contracts with those provisions in, or he would recommend against it, all right? Now, I'll be honest and tell you, this all started because I was reading the 4th of July fireworks contract last year, and it had a liability of insurance. We required them to have $10 million in insurance, but they required us to hold them harmless from any catastrophic events. And I kind of went, well, that isn't good, and that got fixed. But the Prine and Newhoff contract that we signed off on had the same kind of provision in it. All of the engineering firms that we're trying to contract with are trying to restrict our ability to collect from them if they make mistakes. They say that the standard of care is the ordinary standard of care in their industry, but then they put in other provisions of the contracts that are not fair to us. So I raised this because I don't think we should continue to contract like this if we have any choice whatsoever. It's not clear we do have choices because, like I said, Prine and Newhoff has a similar provision. Avon Marsh, but I guess I wouldn't be giving a sole source contract anymore to an engineering firm. This is what it, this is, I'll read it out loud. It says, in recognition of the relative risks and benefits of the project to both client and Avon Marsh, the risks have been allocated such that client agrees, that's us, to the fullest extent permissible by law, notwithstanding any other provision of this agreement, to limit the total liability of Avon Marsh and Avon Marsh's officers, directors, partners, blah, blah, for any and all claims, losses, costs, or damages of any nature whatsoever. And it goes on, and frankly, it's just unfair. So what I've been trying to drive home is we need to, what I recommended to Ashley, and I think we all need to know this is going on because I don't know that we've gotten to the crux of it yet, but I said we should have standard provisions of a City of Grand Haven contract that Ron would create for us, and those are the terms we should offer to the people we regularly do business with. And if we can't operate on those terms, then frankly we need to negotiate what I would call fair terms. I'm not looking for advantageous terms, but typically the guy who drafts the contract drafts in all the advantages to him, and the Avon Marsh contract has it, the Prine and Newhoff contract has it, even the fireworks guy had it, and it substantially shifts the burden of risk to the city, and given our fiscal position, I don't think we should continue to do business that way. So
Mayor, I thank you for reading the fine print.
It's not easy.
Absolutely.
Well, but, from my perspective, I absolutely agree with you. And, contracts are contracts, and they go on and on and on. But, I kind of rely on Ron and the administration to take a look at those contracts.
But Ron isn't reviewing the contracts.
Well, that's what scares the hell out of me.
Correct. I'm with you. We used to have a city attorney who was on staff, and I would assume that when we entered into a construction contract, we'd give it to him to review.
Yeah.
But you haven't been reviewing these, Ron, right?
There have been multiple contracts I have reviewed, and I've been raising this issue every time I've seen it for the last 3-4 years, because frankly it makes me see red when I see those limitations. Right. And when a contractor says, I'll do your work for you, but I'll have no more liability than you ever pay to me over the course of the contract. So I may cause $5 million worth of damage, but if it's a $20,000 contract,
that's what I owe you.
That's what I owe.
Right.
Nothing more. And you can only sue me in my corporate capacity, but we're not the only people who sue. What if a citizen sues? And the citizen sues an individual who was grossly negligent. And there's liability, but we've contracted that we'll pick up the indemnification because we all said they'll only be sued in their corporate liability. It just makes me angry. I'm not going to give you a contract that's going to limit my liability like that if I commit malpractice. So when I've seen it, I've pointed it out, and I had noted this on I didn't review Avon March until I looked at this packet. I noted it. The mayor called me today. She said, she asked me, were you going to say something? I was going to say something tonight anyway, because I find it objectionable.
Your Honor, if I may, done a lot of consulting for large corporations where we did contract with clients, and it is very typical that if the client does not present their own standard terms and conditions, we use ours, and they are going to be advantaged. And so I would suggest that we come up with draft standard terms and conditions that are acceptable for us, and those should be the starting point with which we send out with an RFP, rather than being here and on the receiving end, okay? And so I guess, maybe the action out of this would be to ask our city manager and city attorney to look into something like that.
Absolutely. I thought the practice was that the city attorney was reviewing all contracts. I thought that was part of the agenda forms that get submitted to the clerk, or however the packets are put together. There was a form that staff would have to sign off saying the contract was reviewed by the city attorney. And so I thank you, Mayor. I think we need to make sure that that's, especially if we're entering into agreements or contracts with others, that our legal counsel is comfortable with that, the language that's in it.
Particularly for the engineering contracts where, we've got somebody we're going to contract to do new water intakes for us, and the engineering portion of that project is going to be a small amount of what our risk is going to be when that's in place. So,
I will also say that even when you have standard terms and conditions, and they have their, it becomes then a negotiation at that point based on price, based on, how desirable our work is versus someone else who's willing to, accept those. So it's still, but by not having them, we're really at a disadvantage.
Right. I'd agree with all of that, Karen. One of the things I did was, my brother's a contract engineer contract manager for the Army Corps of Engineers, and I said, do you guys get these things? And he goes, we have federal provisions, and we need city provisions, and we need them sooner instead of later. And Ron, if you could help us with that, I think that would be a really good thing. And that's the only reason I brought this up. If you want to approve this contract tonight,
I don't know that we can if Ron's seeing red.
Yeah.
We're all seeing a little red right now, so.
Right.
I think we heard him loud and clear.
Okay.
So.
I think we need to vote against it then.
But,
We need
may I ask a question?
Postpone?
Or we can make a motion to
Or,
postpone.
yeah, I guess we have Derek here. How is this, because this is part of a larger asset management plan, I guess, or another step in it. So I guess we need to understand the.
Yeah, as far as the actual work goes, postponing it a little bit wouldn't hurt.
It won't hurt?
It won't.
Okay.
However, I don't know what the impact is on the grant. This is all grant money. This isn't any city dollars for this.
Can you find out, Derek, what the impact is on the grant? I know it's grant money, and I think it's great we got grant money to do this, but
Like is it a use it or lose it kind of grant?
Oh, yeah.
And so if we could get under a timing issue.
Right. And if we're going to start with a new contract, and I'm not opposed to that either, but start to negotiate a new contract with an engineering firm, I don't know how many weeks or months that would.
I would say for this contract, I don't think we necessarily need to start with a new contract. I could change 2 or 3 paragraphs and be comfortable with this and stop seeing red.
Yeah, and I don't know if Avon Marsh would be acceptable to that.
The first time I brought this up, you guys, Derek took it back to them the second time and said they changed their limitation of liability from $50,000 to $500,000, like that, all right? But then they said, but that's as much as our lawyers would approve. So it's not really their lawyers, and it really is about who carries the insurance as much as anything else. So, and the other thing they've required in this contract is we insure them. And I don't necessarily think our insurers know that. So, There's some really odd provisions in this contract that,
If there's a time restraint, time for it, and we do postpone this, we can also call a special council meeting if it needs to go forward with it in the meantime, but I'm willing to postpone this and let Derek do a little work on it, see if we can.
A couple weeks shouldn't matter.
Or can,
Yeah, I think that, you know, at the,
or
wow.
can we,
Oh,
can we,
okay, I thought it was
can we
more
approve,
time.
subject to the city attorney finding
I did that once
acceptable?
already, Karen, informally, I would say.
On this particular contract?
Not
Or
on
just
this
with
one,
this-
on an Avon Marsh contract. We only get, I think we need to push back. That's, I guess, where I am. I think postponing till the next council meeting, if you guys are willing to do that, sends a good message to Avon Marsh that says, we don't want a contract under these
I'm okay, as long
conditions.
as we're not going to lose the grant.
no,
by-
I don't think we're in that. I'm saying if we
Okay.
get into a negotiation with
One-
Avon
1 month
Marsh
is okay.
and then have to go to a different firm,
The other thing that, to me, should happen is, it may be that, particularly with companies we deal with regularly, like Avon Marsh, Ron should be able, they should be able to come up with mutually agreeable contract terms, and then we don't have to worry about it in the future. That, to me, is the best way to go.
And, you know, pardon me for not bringing this up sooner, but, you know, when I came here 6 years ago, Avon Marsh had already been on contract for a couple of years. My assumption was that, I don't think it was Ron at the time, I think the previous attorney had looked at that. That was my assumption with Pat. So we weren't sending it to Ron. It's not that I want to put more work on Ron's plate, but I assume that that our attorney had already approved these general conditions. But we can definitely, we'll take 2 weeks and we'll,
And maybe figure it out. Figure
Yeah.
out what we can do in a couple of weeks and report back at the next council meeting. Is
Yes,
that right?
and one other thought that I have for you, since they are a large contractor of ours, is that typically when you have that kind of client and relationship, you would have an overall master agreement that would cover the agreed terms so that you don't have to negotiate them with each, So I encourage you to maybe think that this could be a win-win going forward by having a single overall, master agreement. Just some, food for thought.
absolutely, no, that would be the goal.
Okay. Thanks, Derek.
Sure.
Sorry.
No,
All right,
don't be
so,
sorry.
so we got a motion to postpone.
A
And
motion
is
to
there support
postpone.
for the motion to, Karen did?
Did you get a motion?
So
I did.
we're-
I mean,
Fritz made a motion to
you're postponing
postpone
this
till
to the February 6th meeting.
That's
For the
correct.
next meeting, yes.
And then,
Is there a second support for that?
I'll second.
Second by Cummins.
Fritz,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. Now can we get no, that's all we need. All right, good. We're not amending, we're postponing.
Yep.
Perfect, all right. Reports by city council. Let's start with Karen.
I've got nothing to report.
Let's go to Ryan.
Just want to thank BioSolutions for the tour this evening. I learned a lot, and otherwise, we've been here long enough. So.
Yeah. Amen.
Kevin?
I just want to thank the MLK group that put together all the food, and that was, I know you participated too, Mayor.
It was fun, actually. It was really well run by our student intern.
It was much easier just to buy the food, that's for me. But I want to thank you for that. Besides that, I'm good.
I just want to say thank you to the Reverend Jared Kramer and his MLK tribute that he had over there. I happened to go there and listen to our famous Mac Davis there, and he gave the great speech. And I tell you what, it was very interesting. There wasn't a lot of people there, but it was a good tribute to Martin Luther King. Also, I just want to say thank you, Mayor, for finding that little error there for us tonight. And I want to say thank all you guys for being here tonight. We're all together again. And thank everybody for everything we have. It was a good meeting tonight. I didn't get my way on a few things, but I'm still happy. I'm still smiling. And I'll be
talking.
and I'm still talking, and I'll just keep eating more time up. But I just hope everything goes good. And last note is, I don't care if we should close it or not, but I just want to make it look better. I want it nice down there. I want to be able to see the waterfront, and I want the people on the waterfront to see them, because when they see that, they will come to downtown. So, here we go.
Okay.
That's it, Mayor.
Thank you.
Oh, by the way, one more thing.
Yep.
Baseball season's coming up.
We're still several months out, but spring training's coming up. Okay, I actually, the most important thing I wanted to announce is there is a rare opening on the Loudet Library Board for us to nominate someone for. They don't open that often. We get 2 nominations to what is a district library board. I had written something up about it, but I've lost it. But basically, City of Grand Haven Charter Township, City of Ferrysburg, Grand Haven Area Public Schools, and Robinson Township all support our Loudet Library. And each of us gets an allotted number of directors. And we've had a recent resignation because a director is, he's got business interests in Texas, and he's spending more time there. So I'm just putting the word out to anybody who might be interested, a library lover, hopefully, who might be interested in serving on the board. I already have several people interested that I've got applications for, but we don't appoint to this board that often, so it's a 3-year term. I think they largely run monthly meetings, and it's an opportunity. To me, a library is a soul of the community, and I think it's a really good opportunity to serve the community if you have a love for the library. We also have, the city clerk pointed out to me, multiple, I think all of our spots on the Compensation Commission. This is not nearly as fun as the library board, I will say, but it is a commission that reviews and makes recommendations regarding the compensation of elected officials in town. And I think there's 5 slots, and they're all vacant. They don't meet that often. They meet like once a year, maybe once every 2 years. So if anybody who's listening to this hears that and they'd like to say what the mayor and city council should earn for a living, if anything, please feel free to get on our website and pull down the boards and commissions menu, and there's an application in there that you can file and just say you want to be on the compensation board. That's all. Yep.
We also have those applications available in the
Physically.
city clerk's office.
Yes, if you want to do one with a pencil and paper, that's all allowed. Okay, Ashley?
Just very quickly, I wanted to call specific attention and express some gratitude to Dave Palmer, Bill Chrysler, and Bill Gilbert from, they have organized and really rallied to bring you what you approved tonight as far as the free Friday night concerts this summer. Just wanted to call that out publicly and express gratitude to them for really bringing back that public service that the community valued so much over the previous years.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the second call to the audience. At this time, members of the audience may address council on any item, whether on the agenda or not. Those addressing council are asked to provide their name and address and will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. Council will hear all comments for future consideration, but will not have a response at this time. Those not physically present who would like to may call in 616-935-3285. And if it continues ringing, remain on the line and we'll take your turn in call. Your call in turn. Thank you. Laura.
Hi, my name is Laura Gerard. I own the Sur Shop at 16 Washington. I also live on the other side of town on Washington. I just wanted to say thank you for approving Jeep Fest. It was an event last year that was held before Memorial Day. I had some of my best sales recorded for that weekend with Jeep Fest, and I thought it was a positive thing for the community. I know there was issues with it being on a Saturday, but I actually thought it helped. It was almost kind of a preempt to Memorial Weekend, so thank you. Also, thank you for voting to close down the first block of Washington. I am the other retailer in that block.
Yes, you are.
And I do
and
not
I didn't
get
mean
mentioned
to slight you.
a lot. And because I know I'm on the other end of where Mary's at, I respect the issues that she feels that there are down there. But what I have done since we've been down there is there have been every year I've had issues, and what I have done is I have gone to my neighbors at Long Road Distillery, and we've worked it out. Sometimes, you know, there's a little bit of a learning curve, but that's what we need to do down there, and I agree that it needs to morph a little bit, and I think we can do that. Also, please be aware that we have 2 new businesses that are going to be down there this summer. So there's going to be a new dynamic to that. The business next to me, which has been empty ever since I moved in, it was not. Randy was down there for a couple summers.
Pop-up shop.
But they have some really great concepts and ideas that they're going to try. But the other thing is with these downtimes, there are times where there are less people down there. But I heard tonight about asking about businesses switching their hours. Well, I did that myself. I'm one of the businesses that stay open late in the summer. And I get benefits from that. And I encourage the other businesses in the other blocks to attempt to try it, because if there's more open in the second block, the people are going to go down further in the second block later in the evening. So just publicly, I'd like to acknowledge that. But it's a real slippery slope. You know, the other retailer in my block does close a little bit earlier. If you're expecting another business to direct their hours a certain way, then you can't just do that to the restaurants and not do that to the retailers. So it's a real slippery slope with that, I believe. I understand the idea of it. So if you could just take those thoughts, and we'll work with the DDA and work with our neighbors. But thank you very much for approving it. Have a good night. You guys are doing great.
Thanks, Laura.
Jim Hagan, 400 Lake. I would like to personally thank the mayor for her good suggestions. I think the idea of putting more onus on the businesses who are benefiting and having rapid movement of tables and not concrete barriers, but something else is a fantastic idea. And I would challenge you guys, let's get it done. I mean, you know, I've heard, well, we're going to do incremental things. We don't want to do incremental things. Let's do it fast, get it done right. I mean, getting a design outfit in there is not complex. And just another comment, Saugatuck has a 7-page document on outside dining, and it covers half the stuff that's been debated over and over and over again. It talks about things like planters, and I noticed, you know, Annis had those planters on the sidewalk last year. They shouldn't be there. They should be inside their enclosures. It also says that you can't block, or you can't take away handicap parking, which is being done, and I've always objected to that. I mean, why do we have it? It's because it's required. Why should it be taken away for whatever? Beanbag tossing? And just another comment on the drink carts and not having a plan. There was no plan last year. I brought it up saying every other event has to put together this plan, maps, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, oh yeah, okay, well, we'll get it done. It didn't get done. And then the drink carts appeared, not even cleared. I can't believe it. Would you let anybody else do that? I mean, we get ticketed if there's a car on the parkway during Coast Guard Festival by the public safety, and a drink cart gets put there. Nobody says a word. You know, that sounds mighty fishy to me, to be honest. So you know, let's get this thing organized. I mean, it's another ad hoc summer. It appears to be. You know, and Mike and the mayor were spot on. You know, this idea that you guys have to say, we're closing it, is just not the correct way to do it. It's to get it done right, to look into some stuff instead of saying, we're going to do it exactly the same way we did it last year. Oh, and this incremental work is working. It's not. We keep hearing from John Morgan, you know, Mary Janet's. It's not working for some of our businesses who have been there the longest. I don't know, you guys probably haven't been here, except Mike. Calico Cat's been a business for about 40 years now. You know, so we get a new business in and they get to run roughshod over the block because DDA agrees, and DDA won't even put together a map, a plan for the area. You know, I think it's sad.
Thanks, Jim.
Doug Vance, 100 Washington. Again, thank you, Mike and Mayor. You were excellent, spot on, Mayor. But now that I see that the city is going to benefit from leasing out the space that I'm assuming the city owns, the street, question came to my mind is, why do the businesses in front of that city-owned property get the benefit of that city property? How come I don't get a chance to have the benefit of that property? How about auctioning it off? Or, you know, I mean, we've heard from the food cart people that they aren't doing too well where they've been allocated. Why not put it out for bid? Why do those few businesses get the advantage of that space just because it happens to be in front of them? You know, I've got a space in front of me that's taken by the city in this big flower box and stuff, and everybody comes and sits on it and stuff because they won't let me put any seating out there for people to wait on. You know, I'm offended. I am offended as a business owner. We are open 7 days a week, from morning till evening, and you've got businesses that have the advantage there that aren't. What advantage is that to the city? How does that bring in more people to the city? My reason for being open 7 days a week was to benefit the other businesses downtown, because if they come in for us, they'll possibly go to these other businesses and vice versa. That was my decision 5 years ago. We're just starting our 6th year, maybe. But now that you've decided to close down at least 30 parking spaces, I'm back to my parking problem. I just had 2 leasees, renters, leave. You know why? Because they've had it with the parking problem. You give the advantage to the condo owners. They can park their car there and leave it there all summer long and nobody's going to touch it because there's no sign that says 3-hour parking. Why was it designated there and not where the renters are? I mean, it's discrimination, pure and simple. The Wall Street Journal this week, there was a lead article, why your favorite restaurant might close. Chains have weathered the pandemic better than independents, and they might do better in a slowdown too. And in case anybody's heard about where the economy's going, we're a one-place operation. Everybody else down there is not. We have to endure what they don't have to endure, and I'm not taking anything away from them. They can run their business any way they want. I wish them success as well as us. But we're at a disadvantage. We've been discriminated against. Oh, and thank you all for coming to talk to me about it before making your decision.
Anybody else? Okay.
Well, first I want to thank you for adopting the HRC recommendations tonight. That, you know, including in those recommendations is that commitment to mediation. And, you know, Mayor, you looks like you've already looked into that, and I look forward to putting that in motion. So we can solve some of these big issues in front of us, like Harbor Island, that we're stuck in a stalemate situation. Secondly, I want to invite you all to the implicit bias training that we will be having. It's an open meeting with Ken James from MCC. It's 4 to 6 p.m. on February 16th. You're all welcome to come. Anybody in the community is welcome to attend remotely or virtually and watch the meeting, or come in person and join. We don't have much room at the BLP boardroom, but anybody's welcome to come, and that's an open invite. Thank you very much.
Mike, the date is February 16th?
February 16th. We still have to get it approved by our board next Thursday, but I don't think that'll be a problem.
Thanks.
4 to 6, it's our regular board meeting day, 2 hours before our board meeting.
Thank you, Mike.
Steve Miller, 1540 Penoyer. I had a chance to talk to Bob Vance, and I still kind of, my 2 cents, I do think that he is one of the good guys in terms of providing affordable housing, especially in a really desirable area. And I hope that ultimately that gets somehow considered in his concern with his renters. And also just in terms of his concern about survivability and vibrancy and everything. I think that the people that care about downtowns, which is probably everybody in this room, realize that downtowns are challenged, and they have been challenged for decades all across America. It's not an easy issue at all. And I'm really glad about the outcome for dining. I think that too often, this opinion is shared by many people, I think that too often there's an underlying philosophy of this is what we've always done, so therefore it should just stay in place. And I don't believe in new things just for the sake of new things, but let's keep in mind, our police department institutes new ideas, our fire department, our hospitals, our schools. So let's try and be balanced and not be so resistant, which I feel the city is sometimes, to new ideas. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
John O'Connor, Long Road, 18 Washington. I just want to say thank you for the consideration and adoption of the ability to have outdoor dining and the social district continue again for the summer of 2023. By my count, there's 10 storefront businesses in the first block of Washington. I think the last time I was here, I brought a letter signed by 8 of those 10 storefronts in support of the decision you made tonight to support that. And I look forward to working with my neighbors, Tim and Laura, both in the room here from Kirby and from Surf Shop. I think we have a great working relationship with the folks in the first block. And I look forward to making the changes necessary to do this better. I too am encouraged, and I appreciate the conversation around not only the facilitation of a potential change in the street. I think that's a great idea, but I've mentioned it before, and I'll bring it up again. I think we need to have a conversation about parking in downtown. Those parking lots behind us are the best, in all the DDA lots are the best spots for our guests and visitors to park in. But my employees and the employees of every business downtown, whether you're a hospitality business or a retailer, are competing for those same spots day in and day out. It's not great for me to have a line cook or a server have to go check their car because they showed up to work late because traffic was bad to get into town, and they've parked wherever they could park. And then they got to run out halfway through their shift to check on their car to make sure the meter guy's not out there chalking their tires. So I think we need to have a more comprehensive discussion about parking in Grand Haven, especially for retailers. If the challenge is Tim's got 20 employees and I got 20 employees and Laura's got a few employees and we're all taking up parking spots, those are parking spots for our guests and our visitors. So let's figure out how we can potentially have some off-site parking that's saved and reserved. They can park up here at City Hall if they know, or some other lot that's further away. I'm willing to pay for that. I'm willing to make sure that I know that there's a secure spot for all my employees to park that's safe and guarantee that they come to town, they're going to have a spot. It's going to free up a whole lot of parking. And that 30 spots or 18 spots or whatever that is in the first block of Washington doesn't matter at that point, because there's going to be a heck of a lot more spots downtown near the retailers that guests and visitors can join. I'm proud of Long Road. We were open 7 days a week last summer. I'm a businessman. If I can find a way to be open from 11 o'clock till 11 o'clock every day of the week, and there's money to be made there, I will do it. But hospitality, like all businesses, are competing for employees right now. We've upped our wages. We guarantee at least a $15 minimum wage to every employee in our building and every location that we have. We're trying to be on the cutting edge of treating employees well. I thank you for adopting your support for DEI. That's important with the changes that have happened in Ottawa County in the last week. I think it's going to be harder than ever to attract people to want to come work in this community. And so your local support of supporting diversity and inclusion means a lot to me and to my business. And so I thank you for taking that stand, because I'm fearful that there's going to be other businesses in Ottawa County that aren't going to be as fortunate, because the people are going to choose to work elsewhere. And I hope that doesn't impact the tourism that comes into your community as well. That people are going to choose to spend their dollars and vacation in other communities that are more welcoming and more hospitable. I think had a lot of points I wanted to make up here real quick. Lastly, I think just from a vibrancy standpoint, you know, I call Grand Rapids home most days of the week, and one thing our DDA has done is Relax on Rosa, which is our social district on Monroe Center by Rosa Parks Circle, kind of our downtown gathering space in Grand Rapids. DDA programs live music during the lunch hour every Thursday as a way to encourage folks from other businesses to come out, maybe spend some time shopping, eating a sandwich and enjoying something in downtown. So, you know, I know that there's competing music often on Fridays and Saturdays or at night with the musical fountain, but I think trying to have some programming downtown during the midday weekday hours would be a great benefit to ensure that people can be open. If I can be open every day of the week, I think we will. I think every business will. It's a dollars and cents equation, and you know hospitality businesses run on razor thin margins. So thank you again for your support. I look forward to being at the table, involved in these conversations, continuing to figure out how to do this better for everyone. And I think lastly, if there's ever an opportunity to maybe join the DDA, I would welcome that opportunity, myself or my business partner, to be appointed to that body, to be someone that gets to have these conversations on a monthly basis. Thank you.
John, whoa.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you fill out an application?
My business partner did, but
What's
didn't get
his name?
Kyle Van Streen.
Say it again?
Kyle Van Streen. It was a while ago. He didn't get
I don't
appointed.
think I saw it.
Yeah, it's been about a year probably. So
I've been looking for somebody from the beverage or the...
One of us would be glad and willing to serve.
Okay,
So
fill
I
out
will.
an application.
I will. Very good. Thank you all.
Good evening again. My name is Sarah Howard, and I'm here on behalf of my client, Andrea Hendrick, who is a board member of the BLP, and I wanted to address some of the comments that you made during your consideration of the issues on the BLP report, some of the comments by Chair Westbrook when he addressed this group. I would point out that if merely making a comment in public about whether or not one of the other board members has discriminated, Chair Westbrook has now made my client eligible to make an insurance claim to get representation to present a position statement. I mean, I would strongly disagree that triggers insurance coverage, and the larger issue is here that my client did not get an opportunity to be represented in the same manner that the board and its majority was. And so I think it's really important to consider that when you're taking into account the report and what the HRC was able to do. I think they did a great job with what they were able to do, but they don't have the power of subpoena. They can't make anyone give a deposition and sworn testimony. They can't look through their email. They can't really do the type of litigation style investigation that has maybe been implied might have occurred, or there's not the type of conclusions with the type of investigatory power that we normally talk about. So accepting the report is completely appropriate. Concluding that there's not enough evidence to find gender discrimination, that's completely within the power of the HRC. But this isn't a adjudicative body, nor is the HRC an adjudicative body. So I question whether or not the insurance company was appropriate to appoint counsel. I would also note that 2 members of the Board of Light and Power are also on the board of the insurer and can appoint counsel. So I think it's important to keep those things under consideration, and if the Board of Light and Power chooses to mediate, they choose to mediate. But as the mayor wisely pointed out, there's usually mediation may not be all that productive when you're talking about elected bodies and everyone having a right to speak, and whether or not the Board of Light and Power is allowing certain members to put items on the agenda, even if they're going to be voted down, to be heard, which this body did this evening, and I'm not sure the BLP has always done. And again, my client has significant factual disputes with a lot of the things that were in the board's position statement. But, she can't hire individual counsel on her own, and she's decided because nobody can adjudicate anything, there's no point in pushing the issue further and trying to undergo a process with paid counsel to do this. So, she has pro bono counsel here tonight who could have been home with her family instead of, not that I didn't enjoy being at the council meeting all evening, but the point is, I think all of those are important considerations when you decide if you need to engage in mediation with the Board of Light and Power and whether that's appropriate. So I appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, meeting's adjourned.